I've stayed out of those.
All right, good evening. This is the April 8th meeting of the Advisory Committee. Before we get started, we'll go around and have the committee members introduce themselves. Start with you, Arlen.
Harley Sterling. Rick Stillman.
Dave Benton.
Pat Sneed.
All right, and so our agenda tonight, we've got three areas we're going to be reviewing. We've got the zoning articles that are on the warrant. Ray Goff, our town planner, will be going through those. Then we'll probably do a quick update, just a little discussion with Jack Hathaway, our town administrator, just where we are with the budget. Then we've got the Norfolk Elementary Schools coming in and the King Philip Regional School District coming in. So that's our agenda for this evening. All right, so Ray.
Which one do you want to go over first?
Well, let's see, there's two or three, so why don't we go with the long one first, which is labeled as, if we're looking at the March 31st draft of the warrant. So this is labeled Article G, which has to do with the multifamily housing district amendment.
Sure.
And covers, if you're looking at the draft warrant, pages 6, 7, 8, and 9. So, all right, Ray. So we got quite a bit of stuff in this, or at least it's a long article, but maybe it's not as.
Well, why don't I try and hit the high points?
Yes.
That way I can explain to you what we're trying to accomplish here. This is an overlay district that would be placed upon the C1 district, the R1 district, and the R2 district. The intent of this overlay district would be to allow multifamily housing close proximity to the train tracks, the train station. So there's a 2,000-foot perimeter radius that would be placed on the town zoning map that would allow, and that's basically from the intersection of 115 and the train tracks. This would allow multifamily housing to occur in this area, really, in proximity to the train tracks to encourage development and to encourage more commuter service and more development in the downtown area. Thresholds that you need to cross are, number one, you need a minimum of 2 acres of land. You have to have at least 50 feet of frontage on town road or state road. You have to have any parcel that currently exists is applicable, except for residential subdivisions that have occurred after 1958. I believe is the number, I have it in here somewhere. But when the subdivision regulations came into effect, we used that as a sort of a cutoff point. So if there's a subdivision, and I'm thinking of the one that is to the right of it, as you come across the train tracks on 115, to the right there's a subdivision there. So that subdivision wouldn't be applicable. So those folks wouldn't have to worry about an apartment building coming in their neighborhood. The other thing you have to have is you have a maximum of 10 units per acre. So that would be a density requirement. The maximum of 12 units per building. 40 units would be the maximum for each development. So you couldn't get any more than 40 units based on this. And then your maximum number of bedrooms, and we have a bylaw that deals with bedrooms. So kind of sticking with that, but moving a little bit away from it is using an average. So you have an average of 2 bedrooms, no more than 2 bedrooms for the whole complex on average. In order to get more affordable housing, by the way, any one of these developments would be required under our inclusionary zoning to include 10% affordable. So you have to have affordable housing. But as an incentive to put in more affordable housing, we would add 2 units if you go above 25%, match or go above 25% on your affordables, so you get 2 extra units in that case. And if you're using an existing building, an adaptive reuse of that building, anything over 75 years or older, would get you 1 more unit
Is there anything 75 years old on
And
that?
that's, yeah, I was gonna ask, in that same, in that radius, right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
They may not be. I was actually thinking of the Gross's property. That seems very
Yeah.
old. There's probably a few others there. And that's kind of what I was thinking about. So that's sort of where you have to be. You need town water in order to be applicable to this. I don't know which version you got, but I had one version that also had sewer in there. Obviously, sewer's not applicable here. I did take that out in the later version. I hope that you guys got the right version. But that kind of gives you the lay of land as to what I was thinking with this.
Okay. And are you modeling this provision off of?
Yes.
Either state standard or another town or?
I stole Medway's.
Medway's, okay.
And I thought that was a good model. I liked what they were doing.
And where did they apply theirs? Do you know offhand which part of Medway?
I believe they're using their downtown area. And,
Much of it there
there's
is.
as much as, there's not much there.
Right, yeah, it's kind of a
Yeah.
zip
Like
through
that
on a
straight
village,
line.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But they've actually have district boundaries that they're creating. I thought more applicable would be the train tracks and the train itself being that center point where we would, I think, foresee growth. The growth is coming to Norfolk. We all know it. We all see it. This is one way to sort of curb it. One of the impetuses of doing this was that we've got at least one 40B that's going to be coming in this year. There should be another one coming in within the year. And this would take the 40B provision and have an alternative to having 40Bs coming in. And it would allow us to, instead of have these reviewed by the zoning board, which they don't have a lot of experience with dealing with developments as a normal cost of their doing business, it would bring it over into the planning board as a special permit. So now the planning board would have sort of the normal cost of their business is dealing with developments, looking at site provisions and adequacy of infrastructure, that kind of stuff.
But it doesn't prohibit a 40B, it just puts some additional regulations in there that they may or may not have to apply.
It's an option to the 40B.
Okay.
That's really where it becomes useful. What happens with the 40B is there's a cap on the profit that they can make, so you can only make 25% profit on 40B. Something like this would be very incentivized for a developer to say, hey, here's another option. I'm not limited by all those restrictions of a 40B. Plus the application process, it's not the simplest of processes to do. So someone who's very experienced at 40Bs might look at this and say, well, yeah, there's certainly that incentive to make a few more dollars here. I would probably do it. And that's one of the reasons why I'm putting this forward, is to give the town another option and see if there's another way to allow affordable housing to happen.
Because without this is a potential developer who's focused on 40B style developments, is that their only path, is to go down the 40B route in our town?
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right. So here we're trying to create an incentive for them to work with the town, as opposed to, I'm just gonna follow the strict 40B rules.
That's
and
correct, yeah.
the town, you'll see what I end up with, type of thing. I
Yeah.
gotcha, okay.
I'm curious about the two-bedroom average. I mean, the only way to get above two then would be for somebody to have one. And is there any real possibility of having one-bedroom units built?
Yes. Yeah, that does happen. When
We're
they
talking
have
about studios?
Yeah, studio apartments. One of the limiting factors on any one of these types of developments is the size of the septic system. You only go 10,000 gallons per day. And then that puts you right around the 40 units. So you're limited in that respect. And then the number of bedrooms also can have an impact on what you can put into the ground, or it takes away from that number, I should say.
I was just curious as to whether there's actually a market for those kinds of things
Oh, yeah.
in a town like ours.
Yeah, especially next to the train tracks. That's really where the market is. That's where development is pushing to occur, is that they want that proximity.
So 2,000 feet, right, that's a little less than half a mile. So how far, we're going down a little past the old town hall, down Main Street?
Yep.
And then up, how far up are we going?
Almost to the elementary school and all of there, but not there yet.
Okay.
And then a little bit past Boardman Street to the north. And then there's not a real good landmark after, but I'd say Castle.
Yeah.
Not to Castle, but as close as you can get there. I think there's one or two houses nearby that fall
Okay.
within.
Do you have a map showing this?
I do. I do have a small little map. I'm sorry I didn't bring anything to present. This is something that I put together. And I wish I had more. Maybe I do.
Scan it and just shoot it over to the machine?
Sure.
Well, so we can get the display working. I'll go make some copies.
Sorry.
That's okay.
How many realistically, how many lots are big enough for, could you possibly fit in here and make this work the way you envision? It doesn't seem like there's a lot of open space that
There's
would.
not a ton of lots there. I would say on the high side, there's probably a dozen.
Okay.
Realistically, we're probably talking about a half dozen.
So on this map, I see a orangish circle with yellowish stuff underneath it. We're looking at the orangish circle?
Yeah, the orangish circle is the radius, and the yellow stuff are those lots that I thought met the threshold of 2 acres. And in fact, in one case, I actually had the school in there, and okay, I gotta cross that one out.
So these, because they come within the orange, because they extend out, that's okay.
I only used those because they touched the radius, and those probably would fall out, because one of the other provisions that I added to this was you have to be more than 50% in.
Okay, so everything is more than 50% in of these bright yellow guys
Yeah,
is part of this overlay.
right. So I included everything. I was very generous there, trying to include everything just to see what fell in, and then my plan was to sort of pull all those things out. Unfortunately, I didn't get that far.
Right, if there's opposition to this, what would cause people to oppose this?
Probably the
Like
density.
in terms of discussions, it's going to be density?
I think density has been the biggest problem. In sitting through 2 of the town meetings so far, the first town meeting I sat through was the fall town meeting. I'm very concerned about density, you know, and the provision that was removed from the zoning regulations was really a question of density.
Yes.
So,
And how do the density,
swap with you.
maybe you said this and I missed it, but how do the density requirements of this proposed zoning bylaw compare, say, with the 40B regulations? Roughly the same, more restrictive, less restrictive?
Less restrictive. 40B, there is no restriction on density. You know, there are requirements that they have to they can't be dissimilar to the town in some ways, but it's vague at this point. So you can see upwards of 9 lots per acre.
Okay.
And that's really
Per
why-
acre?
Per acre, yeah. Oh, 9 units per acre, I shouldn't say
Okay.
lots, but units.
Yeah,
They could end up being lots, but,
yeah.
so this would be less than what you could have after
Okay.
40B. Again, you know, the big restriction is the septic system, and depending on how they go about or what kind of field that they can create, that can be very limiting. So we're helped in that respect.
So if I'm a neighbor, you know, a person living in this area, this is a good deal if I'm concerned about 40Bs, but in the same sense, it's probably not a good deal if I think there's no chance of a 40B coming here. I'd rather probably, you know, that's been the concern, is the density. And that's the thing we've been beat up on every time we brought any kind of a change to this downtown zoning. You know, I'm just concerned with chasing the same thing again, maybe a different way, and I like the idea that it's an incentive and it maybe gives builders an opportunity to do something that's more fits Norfolk better than a 40B. But I'm not sure how much support you're gonna get at town meeting, but.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm gonna get a lot of support on it, but, you know, as the planner, as your planner, this is something that I see in the town that it's going in that direction, and I think to be proactive and to put something forward that we can discuss, I think it's an appropriate thing to do at this point. If it doesn't pass, you know, my heart's not gonna be broken, it's just that we'll
It's an
move on.
opportunity,
But it's
yeah.
an opportunity to discuss it,
Yeah.
I think the town needs to talk about it and
Mhm.
see what's appropriate and what's not appropriate.
Right.
Maybe if it doesn't pass and, you know, there are some real points that come through during town meeting, we can bring it back in the fall and maybe, you know, as a different version of something else that makes some sense. You know, I certainly don't want people to think that this is the be-all, end-all. You know, it certainly is, it's a good place to start talking.
Mhm.
This allows up to like 9 units per acre, 9.
This is 5.
So this, I thought I just heard you say.
That
It's
was,
the
I was
40Bs.
asking
40B is
relative
9.
to a regular
So-
40B.
But 5's what we have now, right? 5.
We don't
Right,
have that provision that was, the residential only provision was removed at the fall town meeting. And so this would bring back that ability as a multifamily.
One of the differences, somebody asked, Rick asked earlier, or somebody asked about the difference between this and the 40B. 40B would be 25% affordable. This would be a minimum of 10.
10% affordable, incentive if you go up to 25 over 9, so you get 2 units.
So you could put 7 units if you went more than 25%.
It doesn't give you a density bonus, but it, you know,
Right.
gives you more units.
Alright. Yeah, it definitely, as you said, Ray, it's definitely another option for the town. It's something.
Right. I mean, we tried-
We've been, this has been going around and around for,
This is the
this is
third?
probably 3rd or 4th straight
Yeah.
town meeting. We're gonna have this
This
discussion,
conversation?
especially relative to going up and down Main Street or right in the downtown
Sure.
area. So I think it'll, I suspect there's going to be one element that says, you know, geez, we've talked about this for 3 town meetings, why are we doing it again?
And there's an answer to that.
Right.
The answer is that it's coming. You might
Right.
as well be ahead of the curve than behind the curve and trying to catch up.
It is coming in the sense that a 40B is going to wind up in this 2,000-foot circle.
Yeah, I would say it this way, there's development pressure that's happening right now in Norfolk and in surrounding communities. We're on the train tracks, so we actually have extra development pressure because of that, and that the 40Bs are going to be coming. We've got 1, 2 maybe in line, we could have others coming down the tracks very shortly. So this is an option, and it allows the town to be able to predict and to tell where the density is going to happen. And if we're getting affordable housing as part of this development, these types of developments, then what that does is that relieves us from some of that pressure from the state approving the 40Bs.
Right, because if we have enough, we can keep it out.
Right.
Well, they're
What's
never
the
gonna have it.
threshold?
Realistically, we'll never get there,
We'll
because
never have
10%
enough,
of your
but if
total
we-
housing.
If
Right.
they're moving in the right direction.
But if we're moving in the right
Yes,
direction and
that'll
we're
help.
increasing on a regular basis, then they're more likely to let us increase at our own rate instead of shoving it down our throats.
Yeah. I see in the draft warrant we have, it says, we're in draft form here for this article, and there might be, are we anticipating a few more changes or more just wording cleanup, Jack? Where do we kind of stand
Well,
there?
there's still discussion to be had at the planning board.
Okay, all right, so you're still waiting effectively for planning board input in terms of whether they see there's some changes.
Yeah, we're meeting next Tuesday,
Next
so
Tuesday
I'm
with
hoping
that,
that
okay.
we can have some good conversation there, and if there's any changes, you guys will get that right away.
Alrighty, okay.
There is, I think someone said there's been a number of initiatives to encourage development in the center of town, and at least so far, they haven't borne fruit. So there's a
Couple of reasons for
natural concern that do we really understand what creates incentives, and why is this going to be different from all the past efforts that we've done?
I think one of the things that's happened is you've got some new ownership over here at the Walgreens property and the Retail A property, as well as the two lots that are across the street. I think that moves things forward a little bit more. This
Sorry,
particular...
I don't understand what that means. Someone else has bought the property from?
Yeah, Super Stop
whomever?
and Shop had owned that property.
Yeah, okay.
And they have sold that property to a person from Newton. It was a real estate developer and is looking to develop some things here. So I think that's been the big holdup here in Norfolk, is who owned the property and what they were willing to do.
Uh-huh, that's interesting.
So what exact property did Stop and Shop own? All,
They
and
owned
what have
all
they?
of it. Everything over there, they owned all the way to that Castle development.
And everything out to the street?
Yeah,
And they've
Yeah,
sold
and
it
then all the way
all
to
to
the
the
MBTA
same Newton
park.
developer?
yeah, the MBTA park.
Oh wait, the
They've sold
MBTA owns
everything
that though?
but the Stop and Shop lot, which is next
Well-
to the MBTA. So, do
No.
you have the map?
It's
Yeah.
it's hard to see.
Yeah, it's hard to see, but where it says B1 inner,
Yep.
where the B is,
Mm-hmm.
and inner, the I on inner,
Mhm.
that's the Stop and Shop lot. And that's right next to, and you can see the little bulb with the cul-de-sac there.
Yeah.
That's right next to the MBTA parking lot. So that parcel there is the last parcel remaining out of what Stop and Shop had owned. So they bought the sort of the green area out in front of Walgreens.
Right.
There's two lots there. They bought the parcel, they bought Walgreens as well as.
That
what
building
is-
that
yeah,
they're
that
trying to
building.
get something into.
It's getting closer and closer.
Well, yeah, what's going on with that?
They got their
Just,
sign
on
up,
the
one,
side.
yeah.
Well, it's been saying coming soon.
Physical
for-
therapy's got their sign
Physical
up.
6
therapy,
months.
Yeah, they're probably moving faster.
Faster than
Yeah.
Silla's.
I would say they'll be in by the end of the month.
Yeah, yeah.
That's good.
And that's a physical therapist that was on Route 1A.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
So they're moving over here,
Yeah.
and then Silla's Cafe is probably a month or two behind them.
Okay, but they are going forward?
Yes, they are. Yeah, they just pulled the sign, they just delivered a sign permit
Oh, good.
application, so.
Good.
So that's real good news.
I know, that's great.
Yeah.
Get a couple of-
Yeah, I mean,
Things
it's
open,
just a little
yeah.
bit more
Exactly.
movement, and I think we'll get more and more. But, you know, to answer your question about why is this helpful, the density is really what you need to have around the retail area. You need people, you need bodies.
Yeah.
And that's what this would deliver more people in the downtown area. That makes it more exciting, more interesting. We all go to public parks to watch people, you know, in a lot of ways. You kind of sit there and you watch people, and that's kind of what you're looking for, is a little bit more activity here.
Well, I know that, you know, along the trains, I mean, just followed out, Dedham obviously has grown exponentially around their train station. Norwood has, you know, huge condo complexes there now.
Right.
Walpole's, I know, proposing, their builder's proposing to put where the current train station is, a very large apartment complex. Many of them one-bedroom units.
Right.
On top of that little, where the train station is now?
No, you can't touch the train station, that's historic.
I'm sorry, yes, that is.
That
the-
parking
yes.
lot, that vacant lot next to it, across the street from the train station, is
Okay.
Oh, where they park?
where people park.
Yes.
That will be, and that whole, that big building right next to it.
Yeah.
It's partly a, you know, used to be Workout World or whatever it was.
Yes.
That's all gonna be torn down and redone,
Oh, gosh, yeah.
and so they're doing significant investment there because of the train tracks, you know? So I think this,
All
I think
right.
you're right, it is
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah.
Have there been any discussions with the new owner of the former Super Stop and Shop land about whether or not this would facilitate their plans?
He's all for it. All for it. He'd like to see more density, more bodies down in this area, and it would certainly help with him filling the spaces and getting more to happen here. You know, we've got a mixed-use provision in our B1 district, and as part of that mixed use, we require residential to be mixed with commercial, so the second floor will be residential,
Right.
first floor. One of the obstacles that he's up against is trying to fill that that residential space sort of in a vacuum, an island. And so, you know, if there's more going on here, it becomes a lot easier to fill that space.
What would these look like?
Go ahead.
Up the hill, you've got this development, what is the development up the hill that is going on, it's like condominiums there?
Town center
Town center, yeah. So those are all basically right next to each other with separate entrances, right? So what would but that's not a multifamily dwelling?
It is.
It is?
Yeah,
Okay.
because those are all connected.
One building.
Those are all,
There's like
okay.
four units in
Yeah.
one building, and then 4 units in another building.
Okay.
So, I mean, you could see that type of development happening
Okay.
very easily.
So are we introducing a new definition for that kind of building? The multifamily housing?
Yes.
And that was a 40B, that project, 40B. So that didn't meet our zone.
Okay, that's.
That went through the state process.
I understand. All right, thank you, that's very helpful.
All right. Any other questions on that article? Ray, I don't know if you have we have the petitioner article about the driveway splitting on.
Sure.
Do you have an opinion on that one?
I'll do my best.
Yes,
I
or just
didn't bring the
No,
paperwork
that's-
with me, I apologize. But,
although if you want a quick of this.
yeah, I think the point.
Sorry, which one is it?
This is the
L?
single driveway for 2 lots.
Oh, yeah.
Which one is that? L? I just-
L.
Yeah, yeah.
The point here is to look at, we have some private platted roads, we have also lots that you can't, you need to, let me back up for a second. Under the Norfolk zoning, in order to have a lot that's buildable, you need to have the access and the frontage on a town road. And the access and frontage both have to happen on the town road. What this is doing is it's allowing frontage on possibly a private road or a platted road. In some cases, we have some areas of town that have been platted years ago. It was never built, so the lots exist on paper, the road exists on paper, but there's no way to get to them unless you build a town road. This proposal is to allow you to do driveways instead of building a town road and having another road added to the town responsibilities. This would allow you to do a driveway or a shared driveway to get to possibly 2 lots, maximum of 2 lots. So it's another opportunity for the town to allow either these lots don't get built on or you build a town road. That's basically the 2 options as we see it now.
So it sounds like you're favor of the idea?
I think it's a good option. I think the possibility of having another town road to take care of is a burden for the town, and the burden never goes away. So to allow shared driveways in certain circumstances, and that's what this is, it's very, very tight in terms of the circumstances that it happens. You know, it's a good option for the town to avoid an extra road that you have to take care of. And most of the time, these are cul-de-sacs, so if you talk to the guys at DPW, cul-de-sacs are never a good thing to have to plow because it takes quite a long time. You can't just zip down the road and zip back up the other way. You know, you have to work the cul-de-sac and try and get in there and then clean it all up. There's lots of backing up that goes on. So it's a time-consuming thing to have a lot of cul-de-sacs.
If you're gonna go to all the trouble to have a cul-de-sac, why limit it to 2?
Well, this one doesn't.
This
This does, right?
This
Oh, yes, this limits you to 2, right.
This avoids the cul-de-sac, so it gets rid of the cul-de-sac option, or it leaves it as an option, but this is a better option for somebody who wants to develop a piece of property, or multiple pieces.
I think if you get into 3 or 4 lots, you're gonna get, the fire chief is probably gonna be a little upset about having to bring trucks into a driveway to get to numerous lots.
Exactly. Some towns that have this already, they have a multi-lot, 2-lot shared driveway kind of thing that they allow. This is just another thing that's being brought to the towns.
Any downside that you see to the proposal?
There's always a downside. You know, it could potentially draw more development onto some of these areas that right now aren't getting a lot of attention. So you could see upswing on applications for developing these lots. Some of them might not have, they might have the access, they might be a little bit tough to develop. So you might see some of these tougher lots to be developed, get more attention, potentially become developed. You know, not the best lots. You know, as a planner, you always want to see the best stuff happening, but you always have to set those minimum thresholds. And sometimes the minimum thresholds, you know, you add up all these different minimum thresholds, and you feel like, boy, if I could have just kicked this thing out, it would be better just to stop it. So that's definitely a downside.
Okay.
I would think public safety would have the same concerns that you just mentioned about the cul-de-sac. You got a long driveway, you got a way in, but you don't have a way to turn around to get out, especially
Yeah.
not with a big truck.
Yep.
Of course, we do have some long driveways already.
Yeah.
This would
Yes.
encourage them.
Sure.
What does it mean, construction of such private roads or shared roads to be determined by the planning board and the Department of Public Works? So what does it mean?
So,
To be
again,
determined?
it's a matter of, can you get physical access to this house? Is the driveway wide enough to get public safety vehicles down there?
Oh, sorry, I'm talking about the wording, maybe it wasn't clear. I don't understand what the phrase "to be determined."
I think the phrase, and again, I didn't write this was a citizen petition.
Right.
But I think what that means is that they're leaving it in the hands of the planning board as well as the DPW to come up with what they think is the most appropriate design.
X number of feet wide, type of thing.
I can imagine that intention, but I just wonder, don't we have a process in town? Are we
Or requirements.
that this must go via planning or zoning? I don't know, but
Well, I have to say, Arlie, this is always my concern with petitioner zoning bylaws that we've talked about in the past is, you know, what's the unintended consequences of not kind of having it go through the normal review process such that somebody says, well, this conflicts with the bylaw over here, so we need to fix the wording. So, again, that was our concern last year with all the petitioner-led zoning changes, and at least from my end, I still have that concern that, because the petitioner did not go through the bylaw study. No, he's just kind of developed this on his own, if I
Yes.
remember correctly. Yes, okay.
Is the planning board going to weigh in?
Yes,
they will.
okay, yeah.
yeah, certainly. I don't know what this next to last sentence means, and I would think that we'd at least want to have wording that was consistent with practice and policy of the town. But I imagine the petitioner would be happy to take some direction in that regard, but that would be important from my perspective.
As the planner, is there any wording that you would like to see added or changed or taken out of this, the way it's written?
Possibly. Well, I would certainly want to have the police and fire weigh in on what they thought would be a minimum for each one of these. I'd probably add them to the mix to say, get an opinion from those folks as to what you would want, what they would want, to make sure it's safe.
But don't we already have those minimum requirements?
We have subdivision standards, so the subdivision.
We don't have
requirement-
any minimum requirement for a private driveway to be made off of a main road?
No, we don't.
Wow.
I am associated with one of those driveways.
Yes.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he is.
It's amazing.
God help you if you have to back out of it.
Yeah, they
One going up the hill, Shepherd's residence there on Frederickson.
And maybe that's what we should be
Side of
doing,
the
is
mountain.
looking at a minimum driveway standard to say you need thus and such things to happen in order to have a driveway considered in town.
Does anybody
Well, I
have
think
that?
I'm-
I've never heard of them.
I have
On
seen
driveways,
minimum
right?
driveway standards, yeah. but
I would
it's-
think that you would I would like to see that before I saw this go through, because that would require this to comply with that. And then any time that the police or fire felt that that needed to be updated or changed, this would change as a matter of course, because this would be written to comply with that.
Right. It won't be, the police department's not gonna care because they drive cars, but
Yeah.
it's gonna be the fire department. Yeah, I mean, we've all seen dirt driveways that are very narrow and paved driveways that are runways, but I didn't know there was any rules or regulations, other than the cut on the road. I didn't think there was any anything to do with the town.
All right. And the last one we have, Ray, I don't know if, is an amendment to, I believe, the one we did last time.
Yes.
This was, Bob
Yeah.
has put this one forth. And did you guys review this one together, or?
We spoke about it.
This is M?
This is
Yes,
M, yeah. And essentially, what Bob has put forward is the idea that if you're going to have a solar facility, you should have a primary use. And make the solar facility as a secondary use to whatever's going on there. More than likely, it's a home or a business. And same thing with wind. You have to have a primary use in order to do a wind facility.
Okay.
You do have the other overlay districts where we allow solar to be the primary use.
Mm-hmm.
Like we only have 2 of those. Like we do.
Like the town does.
The town does, yes.
But there's a procedure to do that.
Yes.
So if somebody did want to come in and just do solar as a primary use, they would have to follow that procedure and get an approval. This isn't allowed by special use permit. I think what Bob is trying to accomplish is that these things just don't happen everywhere and without a primary use. So you kind of have to live with it. I guess is probably the best way to look at it. If you're going to put in a solar facility or a wind facility, you also have to be right next door with it, rather than just dropping it to an area and let the neighbors there suffer the consequences.
Because this was something where you could technically, before, if this doesn't go through, you could put a self-supporting solar panel right on your neighbor's property line, like a couple feet from your property line, right?
There are setbacks.
So but this would require the setbacks, right? Or-
This would, no, this would not, this doesn't go that far.
Okay.
The prior zoning bylaw did.
All right.
And so you do have setbacks
Okay.
to your neighbors. What this does is just make sure that there's a primary use, meaning a house or business or some other use going on there.
Yeah, so if I just say it, I think a different way, just so I make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
What we did in the fall is we put in the foundation of the bylaw that says that you have to go through a special permit,
Right.
which would, that's where you would get those setbacks and,
Yeah.
I think the zoning board, is it? The zoning board would be able to regulate that.
Yeah.
This just tweaks that so that it becomes, so that you aren't allowed to build a solar farm as a primary use. You have
Right.
to have it as an accessory to your house.
Okay.
I don't know, Ray, lay the cards on the table. Ray and I have discussed this with Bob, and there's mixed feelings, If there may be a situation where it doesn't need to be an accessory use. And I think under the current zoning, as I understand it anyway, the zoning board will be able to make that determination, assuming they get their rules and regulations in order. But it wouldn't be the end of the world if this didn't pass, because it would still be in the hands of the zoning board to say, you want to build this solar, it's a primary use, but it's right in the middle of a neighborhood, that's not going to work.
Yeah, okay.
This does strike me as kind of a solution, maybe looking for a problem, because I just wonder how many bare lots do we have that people are gonna plunk solar panels? Just in the ordinary course of town business over the next, say, 50 years.
Tell me how much energy costs are going to go up.
Yeah.
I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of solar going in anytime real soon, my hunch.
All right, Ray, well, thanks for, unless any other questions? 'Cause-
So
go away,
does this remove the authority of the zoning board then?
No, there's no change in that. So whoever was reviewing this before is going to still review it. What this does is it makes it an accessory use. So the language that's in bold in bold.
So the
that's
zoning,
added language.
so what is prohibited is the primary use, as you've said several times. The zoning board currently has the authority to grant a primary use and to not grant a primary use.
That's right. As solar, specifically solar or wind, as we're talking
Right,
about.
but so from that perspective, this does remove the option that the zoning board now has to approve as a primary use.
Yes, yes it does.
So this is
It's kind of, I guess,
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about an article that I hear you saying that it's no big deal if it doesn't pass. I mean, if we want to do something, it seems like it ought to be on the warrant. It's something we want to do, but if it's something we toss out because somebody thinks maybe it would be a good idea sometime.
I don't think it's that. I think
I'm
it's,
less enthusiastic
I think it's a
about it.
perspective. You know, sometimes, being married, sometimes my wife finds something, you know, that she cannot stand, and I look at it and say, I think it looks fine. I think it's one of those situations where we've got, you know, different people looking at this and saying, as a primary use, it's okay. It's an okay thing to have happen. And other people would look at that and say, no, you've got to have that other primary use there to support this. So like I said, the idea of if you're going to put a solar field next to my house, I want you living there too and looking at it just as much as I am. I think that's the
As things
feeling.
stand now, if I live next to a bare lot, the person that owns that lot has the right to put the solar farm on there? Or
Yes.
he does not?
No,
He
no,
needs-
no, not
he
as a
needs
primary
approval.
use.
As a
As it
primary,
stands today.
As it stands today, they have the right to
Oh, I'm
put it as a
sorry.
primary
You're
use.
right.
Solar field could go in there
And without any,
So with
But
the
zoning
authorization,
still,
with the special permit.
with the special
special permit, so zoning still has to approve it.
so they would still have to get special permit.
Right, so there's a process by which that would get approved. It wouldn't just be, here's your building permit, knock yourself
Right.
out.
And if it was in a neighborhood, assuming zoning would probably not approve it, if it
Yeah.
was sitting in, you know,
Oh,
an
there's gonna
empty
be
lot.
notice, there's gonna be notice to all the neighbors. and
Right.
You know how that goes sometimes.
But if you're on one of the more sparse
Remote.
streets
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
remote areas, it could happen that the zoning board could easily say, yeah, sure, no
Especially
big
if they're
deal.
willing to share.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I take the 100-acre parcel, I'm not sure where there is one, but you take the 100-acre parcel and the people occupy maybe 3 or 5 of those acres, and they've got the rest of the land as a field in the back, and you know, it's out of sight, out of mind. I don't think anybody would have a heart attack that they're gonna put some solar panels there. You know, it seems like a reasonable use of that property.
the new owner of this former Super Stop and Shop land, like he or she wants to put in solar?
That is still owned by Super Stop and Shop, the Super Stop and Shop lot, that one that we were pointing out near the MBTA lot. That one is still owned by them. The other lots were purchased, so I'm sorry for that.
Yeah. Oh, okay, so the land under the new ownership, if the new owner wished to put in solar panels, now they go to the zoning board and they would have to get a special permit to do so. And under this, they would not be allowed.
To just put a field in. They would have to have a building attached to it.
With no exceptions.
Right. So that becomes a use variance, and we don't grant use variances.
All right. Well, excellent. That was a
Yeah.
great explanation of
Yeah.
that one.
No,
'Cause
it was
I was a
very
little
clear.
confused what we were.
Yeah.
Any other questions or otherwise? Ray, thanks very much.
Thank you.
It was very,
Nice
very
nice meeting you,
enlightening.
Yeah.
sitting and talking.
Yes.
Have a great night.
Thanks.
All right, thanks. All right. So Jack, I was thinking just before we got the Norfolk Elementary at 7:30, get back in before then and we're all set, that's fine. But just maybe your perspective, kind of where you're at with the budgets. I know next week we're going to sit down, we moved the meeting to next Tuesday, so it's next Tuesday at 7. That way we'll avoid the candidates night conflict and it seemed like there was it seemed like a busy day on the 15th, notwithstanding taxes, but anyway, I don't know if you have anything at this point, or you're still kind of working through, and we'll be discussing on the 14th, kind of just from your perspective where.
Yeah, there's a lot, I mean, there are a lot of, I'm still, in the ballpark of $500,000 out of balance. So there are still a lot of, not as many as I would like, but a few things up in the air. We're still trying to resolve health insurance. We've got a 10.9% increase in our health insurance, and we've got some options to bring that down to about 4%, but it requires some negotiation with the 5 unions. So we're doing that now. So we're hoping to have some significant savings there. On top of that, when this won't be resolved before next week, is to figure out a better number on state aid. Hopefully a better number. I haven't heard, I don't know if you haven't heard anything. So that's the other big piece.
Mhm.
You know, and I'm working with my department heads to whittle down some numbers on their side. Get some ideas where we can make some savings.
Yep.
So health insurance is really right now the big piece that we're
Yep.
working on.
Yep. And then, have you been talking with the other two town administrators relative to KP's budget? Is there?
I haven't this week, but I have, I did last week, and they're, as is tradition, they're really still just getting their budgets put together. Because
Yeah.
they don't have, they have June town meetings.
Right, so they don't have a strong opinion one way or the other at the moment till they see it all rolled up?
Not really.
Yeah.
I think the KP, the way the KP number works, Rentham is the biggest hit this year, so
Mhm.
they're
Right.
certainly gonna be the one.
Right, who's gonna struggle the most
Yeah.
if it stays at that number, yes. Right. And Plainville, I mean, I know the casino's opening in June, so
Yeah, I mean, they've got.
I'm sure they've got other needs as well, but they must have more money coming in next year relative to what they had this year.
Yeah, they certainly have a lot of building permit fees coming in, they have, you know, but then they have some, you know, negotiated number that they're gonna get that's really gonna go into capital, at least what the town administrator is saying is identified to go into their capital budget.
Mhm. I think he had mentioned that in an earlier meeting, yeah.
I'm just gonna say it over and over again until.
Right.
Until they take it away from me.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Jack, what's the difference between 10% and 4% on the health insurance in dollar terms?
Must be.
Six
you have to
percent,
net-
6% times a large number.
Yeah.
It's gotta be like 50, 100 grand, somewhere in that ballpark.
Somewhere close to 100 grand.
Yeah.
So 7 would get you 50.
Yeah. I need to come up with 500,000. Balance the budget.
Is, I assume the big problem with the budget is education still?
Yeah.
It's not municipal side.
What's that?
It's not the municipal side.
No, it's never gonna be this way.
So with the schools, I know you're talking about getting rid of the paid ride and the paid kindergarten. What's the price tag on those? 'Cause
Yeah, well, that's what we're gonna see in a couple of
Ingrid can
minutes.
talk about that, I think.
Yeah. I think she has it all laid out.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Because I think that is the big, obviously the big piece of their budget, so. I'm sure
The other
that'll-
thing that kills you is that 53rd week. So everything got hit on top of the snow and ice budget. It's
Yeah.
just a bad year to have everything come at once.
Yeah, and Julie's trying to whittle that down too, see if we can, you know, make sure we've got that all fine-tuned. So,
I do agree, it does seem like almost everyone that's come in and presented has
yeah, well,
shown
that's under
up.
the direction of Julie,
Right.
our town accountant, so
Yeah.
he's told them to budget it. because-
Right, right.
And I mean, it's a little bit here and a little bit there.
Yes.
It's not any one that's killing any budget. But when you add it all up, along with the snow removal, what the roads are gonna look like,
Yeah,
you know, when it does get warmer. And now you wanna get rid of two things that it's just more, you
Right.
know?
yeah.
It is, I agree. I think we'll see the same thing in the KP budget in a little while too. There's not like one big thing, but there's 3 or 4 things that add up to a slightly,
Yeah.
a slightly larger increase than probably we were hoping to see.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, I was hoping for a little bit better of a starting spot here,
Right.
but,
right,
you know, I'm still relatively confident that we can get this done.
Yeah.
Been working a lot this week on new growth with the new assessor, because I was worried about that. Change assessors, we've also, it's a reval year, meaning it's just a lot more process going through to get our values certified. But I think we're in a good place. She's got a
Okay.
great plan, and I asked her to come up with a number for new growth, and it wasn't that far different than my number, so
okay.
I was very happy to hear that.
Yeah, all right, yes. Right, because there's probably not, other than what you presented a couple weeks ago, there's probably not, like, we're not gonna solve it through revenue.
No.
Yeah, it didn't seem like it.
No, but, kind of same as on the expense side, I'm trying to nickel and dime it,
Mm-hmm,
a little bit of revenue.
yeah, yeah.
See if I can find some funds in different places,
Mm-hmm,
and then nickel and dime it on the expense side.
right, right, yeah. All right.
Michael wanted to, when you're ready, I'm gonna get Michael to.
Oh, sure,
swap
yeah,
up
no,
the
I
two and stuff.
was figuring we'd just do a little preview for next
Jack, you
Tuesday's
ready?
meeting. Yeah, but where Ingrid is, and then Ingrid. Yep. Yeah, so we'll obviously be going through it all next week and see how
School
close
bus
we
number
are.
is 40 grand.
Yeah, and then what do you think?
I don't remember the
The
other.
kindergarten.
Good evening.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Sit anywhere?
Yes.
Yeah, where are you like? Well, let's see, there is, Ingrid, are you gonna want to sit and talk, or do you like to stand and talk when you're doing it?
I can sit and talk and
Okay, only
I
because
can
the
put my-
camera's there,
Oh,
so
yeah.
probably maybe, that might be the best seat for.
Okay, I just have to connect to
and-
that.
Yes.
I'll sit down one sheet.
You want me to yank this one out, Michael?
Yank it out, that doesn't sound like something good as a computer.
The young piano in this room. Downstairs.
We can try it. So, when you leave, will you help just help make sure Paul uses PowerPoint?
Yeah, let's see.
There's a chair right there. Yeah. You can, I don't know. We have no authority.
Yeah. Chuckleberry up here all the time.
We've lost out. The Conservation Commission was very forward-thinking in their meeting scheduling, so. They seem to be.
Prime
able to-
location.
Yes.
Do they have a budget?
That's what you want.
Yeah, there we go.
Oops. They used
It's
to
bigger
have-
than ours.
They used to have a budget.
Yeah, you can do either side if it's
Do you
easy.
wanna go on that
Yeah, you
side?
guys want to do it?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Sure.
This is a little easier.
All right. That's no problem. You want us to pass these around?
Yeah, I sent that, so
Yes, are
there's
these
nothing
this-
that's changed, but
Okay.
in case anybody needs it.
All right.
And I did revise one of the slides in the PowerPoint, so I have new ones.
Great.
Mine. Same board? Yeah.
Anyone in the audience?
Yeah, does,
There you go.
if they want, those.
I'll take my PowerPoint.
We do have some of these.
Okay.
He'll find us.
Yes.
There's the full budget. Thank you. Awesome. Trish, you want to see them over there? Thank you.
Presentation's tilting towards.
And it reorganizes my desktop because it changes the size of everything. But Mike's here, right? Gonna help me fix that.
That was pretty subtle.
My presentation looked a lot nicer.
Yeah.
In my map.
Straighter and
Took me 45 minutes to get it. Yeah, it did. Well, that's better.
there we go.
Okay.
There we go.
I'll never figure that out of control. That's amazing.
You need to bring him with you.
Yeah.
A little warm tonight. Yeah, we can, yeah, we can.
Ready for us to just jump right in?
You can, you're more than welcome to jump right in.
So I'm Ingrid Allardi, I'm the superintendent of the Norfolk Elementary School. This is Paul Cochran, he's the chair of our budget subcommittee. And thank you for having
Yeah.
us tonight.
Do you guys know, because we could do a
No,
quick
I-
introduction of all.
Yeah, that'd be
I'm
great.
Yeah, that'd be
Dave
great.
Benton, I'm the chairman.
Rick Stillman?
Lisa Keating.
That's Steve.
And, oh, there's Arlie.
I'm the window guy.
And our window man.
Excellent. Great, so thank you for inviting us tonight to share our budget proposal. And we do have some slides we'll walk through to give you an overview, and then any questions you have, we're happy to answer.
Okay. Jump into, start with the district mission. The Norfolk Public Schools offers a safe, joyful, and challenging learning environment that meets the needs of our diverse students. Through school, family, and community partnerships, we provide an education that inspires lifelong learners and cultivates caring and productive citizens of our ever-changing world. So the first presentation slide really is to talk about just an overview, which is essentially an outline of the budget. And our aim ideally was to maintain level services, as well as build in full-day kindergarten and eliminate the bus fees. These were all these decisions that we made throughout this process were guided by our district mission, and I assure you that the process was very thorough. The budget process is really just a step-by-step guide as to the major steps that we took. Again, essentially an outline, and this took, of course, I'd say 3 or 4 months. The first being the budget subcommittee met to review the overall assumptions. What do we have to assume is going to have to be dealt with? COLA, salary requirements, etc. The next was the district leadership team would review the current budget, identify and prioritize critical areas of need. That was essentially brought back to the budget subcommittee where we would discuss those critical needs and also look for reductions in how are we going to deal with these types of things for FY16. The next, Ingrid and the department heads met and with the business manager to review expense requests and also take a look from their perspective as to where they can make reductions. That was again brought back to the budget subcommittee where we made some preliminary proposals and identified areas where we can make adjustments. And the last step was to make that presentation of the budget to the public hearing, and that brings us to the advisory board today.
All right.
So the budget history. As you can see, you'll
Come on in, you have to grab chairs. Sorry.
It's a look at the past 7 years. And you can see that FY09 we were at 9.8 million, which was just about a 2% change from the previous year. I think the real story here is that for a number of years, we went through either a flat budget or a declining budget. And when I guess I should rephrase that and say a flat budget is about 3% of an increase. And that's due to the contractual obligations that we have. It is due to cost of living increases, consumables, prices going up, heating costs, etc. So if it's anything lower than a 3% increase, it is essentially a cut. So you still have to meet the majority of the contract obligations, which is the biggest chunk of expenses. And you have to make cuts elsewhere. So, if you were to take that 3% and do a compound annual growth over 8 years, we would have been $1 million higher than where we are for FY16. So the overall request and assembly of the budget is, I think, very fiscally responsible. It is really addressing the critical needs for FY16, and it's helping to restore some of those cuts that took place years ago.
At the same time as the district and the town as a whole were experiencing difficult financial circumstances, there was a significant decline for us in federal and state grants and allocations. So since 2009, our federal grants are down $332,486, and state grants are down by about $30,000. And simultaneously, there was an increase in unfunded state mandates that we also had to absorb. things like fingerprint background checks, which cost the district about $6,000. We had to move forward with adopting the new educational evaluation system, and there was a lot of professional development and training requirements that accompanied that. That cost about $40,000. We have a requirement for retail training, which is training all teachers in sheltered English immersion for students with English language learning needs. We're required to have somebody trained at every grade level and all administrators trained by 2016. That's about a $17,000 cost. We also have new professional development requirements for, again, the SEI for suicide prevention and for crisis prevention. So there were a lot of unfunded mandates, declining funds, and as you know, the district had quite a few cuts during that time. We've talked about this in the past, but some of the things that were reduced were classroom teaching positions, instructional support staff, the elementary foreign language program was cut, the health education program was also cut, technology staff was reduced, funds for new curriculum materials and updates were zero funded for several years, and transportation fees were added and fees for band were also added, so some of the fees were passed on to students and families. We also had reductions in our library staffing. The last couple of years, we've been very fortunate, and the town has been able to fund the budget, the district budget, at around 4% and actually 4.7% one year. And with those increase in revenues, we were able to restore some of the positions that had been lost. So I would say the last 3 years have really been rebuilding budgets for us, which is exciting. We're not back where we were, but we have been able to bring some things back. So in 2015, last year the town funded 4.25% increase for the school budget. And the budget increase allowed us last year to restore 1.4 developmental reading teachers so that we could provide more reading services and supports to students that were struggling across all grade levels. We restored 0.9 developmental math teachers, and again, that's for remedial support and additional resources for students that are struggling, as well as for enrichment programming for students that are ready for additional challenge. We brought back a 0.4 technology integration specialist to help us promote technology and to use technology to enrich our curriculum across all the content areas. We restored 0.3 of the library cuts. And we had originally hoped to bring back another full-time physical education teacher. We were only able to fund that at 0.5. So we partially restored the health program last year. The students have an additional health class once a week for half a year. And we split that position between the two. Our proposed 2016 budget request is $10,876,598, and this is an increase of 4.27%. Again, we were asked to prepare a level service budget, and that is what we are presenting to you tonight. There are no new positions included in the budget request. The increase in the budget request allows us to meet all of our contractual salary obligations, and there are two initiatives that we're looking to fund in this, and that is to transition to free universal full-day kindergarten for all of our students, and to eliminate fees for transportation. And I'll talk a little bit more about why we put those two things forward. So first, as far as full-day kindergarten, when we met to determine what our critical areas of needs were, we met with the full administrative team, so the principals, assistant principals, curriculum directors, and all the department heads. And we really looked at a wish list of all the things that we thought were pressing needs for the district. Full-day kindergarten has the highest cost, but it was the universally supported #1 priority for what we thought would help enhance the school system and make for stronger educational programming. And some of the reasons behind that are the current state frameworks that we're required to implement are written based on a full-day kindergarten model. So that is the expectation across the state. We deliver that curriculum in a half-day, but it's at a more rapid pace. There's less time for enrichment and extension, and they are really written to be delivered in a full-day model. Most communities in our area offer free full-day kindergarten programs. That don't are in the process of transitioning to free full-day kindergarten. We know that it has a positive impact on student achievement in the early education years, and while that benefit research-wise may fade for some students by third grade, for students with disabilities, for students that are second language learners, and for some select populations, we believe those benefits are much more longer-term lasting. We know that kids in full-day kindergarten have more small group individualized instruction, and it also offers a lot more opportunity because, again, when you have standards written based on a full-day model, what goes is that free play, that developmental social time, because we don't have We just don't have the time. So a full-day model brings more opportunity for peer interaction, for developing social skills, for play, and all of those have positive long-term benefits as students progress through the school system. Again, the curriculum can be delivered in a more developmentally appropriate, slower pace, less anxiety for students and families. And the research shows that parents report a much greater level of satisfaction when their students are in full-day kindergarten programs. I just was going to give you, and this is a change from the original slide, so I'm just giving you some additional statistics for comparison. Across the state of Massachusetts right now, 305 districts out of 312 do offer a full-day kindergarten option, which is what we offer. But 235 of those 305 districts offer free full-day kindergarten. So across the state of Massachusetts, 77% of communities have free universal full-day kindergarten at this time. There are many more that are in the process of looking at transition. So there's only 23% that continue to charge. 98% of students across the state are enrolled in full-day kindergarten. We have seen that trend here in Norfolk. More and more of our families are choosing full-day. We actually had to restructure our kindergarten model this year because we only had 6 families choose half-day. We couldn't run a class of 6 students because it was socially, 4 boys and 2 girls doesn't make for a great social experience for kindergarten. The problem with that, though, is we're required by law to offer a free half-day option. So we had to transition those kids into full-day programs, and they leave at lunchtime. That's not a great, it's just not a great choice. In this area, Plainville and Franklin do offer free full-day kindergarten currently. We did do a survey and talked to 13 local area districts to talk about what their plans were. Medway, Millis, and Foxborough are all in the process of looking at free full-day kindergarten, either next year or 1 year out. So, and we do know students in full-day kindergarten receive 30% more literacy instruction than their peers in a half-day model and 46% more math instruction. So the other thing is that as students in the full-day program transition on, they're less likely to require additional development of math, development of reading, additional instruction, because they have more individualized and small group instruction in a full day and at a different pace. So I think there's long-term benefits to the district there as well. So our recommended budget for next year, we do have 1 teacher retirement. We anticipate a savings of about $33,290 there. We're saving $25,000 more in special education services. That's really from contracted services. We typically had in the past contracted out for some behavioral therapeutic services in the home. We have hired internal staff and we are delivering that ourselves now. So we're continuing to see savings there. Special education materials are down slightly. We have a pretty significant savings in out-of-district tuitions, $155,000 there. One of that is a student that is aging out to King Philip, and another is a reduction that we've reduced a placeholder for a special education position in our budget. District-wide expenses are down slightly, about $1,875, and expenses at the holiday are also down. So we're anticipating a total budget savings of $221,840. Our budget additions, we have about $223,556 in required COLA salary steps and lane changes. And for all other non-union staff, we budgeted a 2% COLA, which costs us about $34,000. The additional cost to the budget, 2.5 kindergarten teachers and 2.5 kindergarten assistants at $208,000, about $51,000. Those are not new positions. That's the portion of the current kindergarten program that we have funded through tuition to date. So by eliminating tuition, we have to move that into the operating budget request. So we have additions of about $517,699. Expense, we do have some expense additions, and these are just copier, toner, things like that. Supplies at Freeman Kennedy, about $8,000. Operations and grounds, we've had a tough winter, as you're very well aware, I'm sure, but that means that in our playgrounds, we have to replace mulch, things like that. And we have some other operations costs that we have to address. Transportation would be up by $56,000. $40,000 of that is the cost of eliminating transportation fees. And the reason why that was the second most critical area of need for us in our budget, the way the law is written is school districts are required to provide free transportation to students that live 2 miles or more away from the school. The intent behind that law is that there's a safe walking route for students that live 2 miles or less. We know in Norfolk that's not the case. We don't have sidewalks, we don't have crossing guards. Due to the hours of the police shift, we can't have additional police staff because that's when their shift changes, right when we're dismissing. So there's some safety concerns there, and we feel it's really critical. Additionally, with the new Freeman Kennedy School, because of the bus, we have an increased amount of traffic exiting onto Rockwood Road at the end of the day, which makes it hard for our buses to get across. So we think if we offer free transportation, we'll see a reduction in parent traffic, better conditions for our buses, and again, we don't have a safe walking route for all of our kids.
And what is the cost of getting rid of the bus fees again?
It's about 40,000 of the 56. We increased it because we're also bidding out a new 3-year bus contract, so we estimated that it would be about 15,000 in increased cost for the new bid. So 40,000 of the increase in transportation is the elimination of fees. The additional is our anticipated cost of the new bus bid.
Which you'd have to pay anyway.
We have to pay anyway.
Yeah, okay.
Last year you had asked about class size projections, so I have those included here. This is our current average class size and our current year number of teachers at each grade level. We are very proud that we have a pretty low class size average compared to the state, but it ranges from about 19.4 to 23.2. You know, in the current year. Next year, we're anticipating requiring or needing the same number of positions, same number of teachers, but some of them are going to be reallocated. So we have an increase in enrollment, and we've actually received another 10 kids that have enrolled for kindergarten. So we have really uniquely high kindergarten enrollment for next year. But we are anticipating needing 6 teachers, which is an addition of 1 from the current year. We will be down 2 teachers in first grade. We have 7 there this year. We will only need 5. But we will need 7 in second grade where we currently have 5, so those 2 positions will roll up. In third grade, we'll be down a position, we'll be down to 5. We need to add a position to fourth grade to meet the enrollment needs, and we'll be down a position in fifth grade. So if you do the overall calculations, we need the same number of positions to maintain the class sizes we have currently.
You said we were better than the state averages. What are those state averages roughly?
I don't have that number right in front of me right now, but there are districts and communities that are struggling right now. North Attleboro is projecting class sizes really high next year, up to 28 and 30. Their override request did not pass. I think the school committee policy is to have in the kindergarten first and second grades, class sizes no greater than 21. And then at the upper grade levels, it's no greater than 25. So we try to stay within that school committee policy. There are certainly communities that have lower class sizes than we do, but there are some that are struggling with those numbers at this stage. Breakdown of our total budget allocations. This is just to show you the majority of our district budget is driven by salary. So the largest, number one, 65% of our budget is for professional salaries. 4% goes to clerical salaries, 13% is other salaries, so custodial, food service, things like that. 10% is services, so that would be transportation primarily. 4% is for supplies. We have 1% for other expenses and 3% that goes to tuition, out of district or charter tuition. So just an overview, the increase in our budget request, just so you can see how that is accounted for, 2.16% of the increase is accounted for contractual staff salary and COLA requirements. We're actually down on the expense side by almost 1%. Transportation accounts for 0.46% of the increase, and the full-day kindergarten accounts for 2.49% of the total budget increase. We do have some things that are not included in the budget request. We, again, tried to prepare the level service budget we're asked to prepare. We still have that 0.5 phys ed teacher that we're looking to restore that would allow us to have a full year of health education at both buildings. Right now we have a half year. We would like to bring back the additional 0.5 development of math teacher. That's a restoration, and that would be for the Freeman Kennedy. We would like our librarians to be full-time. They are not currently, they're 0.8, and we would like to restore that. We would like to continue to look at the idea of a world language program. That is not in this budget request. It is something that we're looking at this year. We're in the process of studying that. We are very interested in restoring world language. There's some challenges around building a world language program at the elementary level. Primarily, in order for it to have a long-term effect, we know that we're trying to build conversational fluency for our kids. And in order to do that, they need to have foreign language instruction daily, 10 to 15 minutes, or at least 4 times a week to achieve that. So in order for us to do that, we would need a full 2.5 teachers. There's a critical shortage of certified licensed foreign language teachers across the state. So the reason we're not bringing that request forward is right now it would be very difficult for us to hire and sustain the staffing there. A lot of foreign language programs at the elementary level are actually falling apart because what happens is you can hire somebody that's not licensed under a waiver for 1 year. You can't bring them forward if they're not meeting their or working towards their license. So districts are hiring people and then having to let them go. So we have sustainability issues. We are looking at some technology solutions and different ways to restore the programming, but we're not ready to move that forward yet. But it's coming, so this is preview for next year. We have some copier replacement needs, around $40,000. We would really love to eliminate the band and music fees and make that program fully accessible to our large students. That's another $24,000. We did reduce an out-of-district collaborative placement, so that's part of the special ed savings that you saw. We have had very good success with the new preschool program that we built last year that we talked about, and we have been able to maintain students in district. So we're comfortable with that, but it's always a little bit risky. And then we do have some extraordinary maintenance needs, but we have reduced that at this time by $30,000. So I think the budget request currently, I think, allows us to meet the fundamental critical needs of the district. It allows us to move forward and maintain a high-quality education by bringing in the full day for universal kindergarten and eliminating transportation fees for our families. And I just wanted to reiterate, and I'm sure you'll hear from King Philip as well, we've all been really working hard in Plainville and Norfolk to try to cost share special services to, as I talked about in the state mandates, to share the cost of some of the professional development and to find ways to be fiscally responsible. So we will continue to do that. Questions?
Right. Thank you. Very nice overview. Covered all the high points. So I think we certainly understand.
Of your 2 changes, the increase or the reduction, elimination of fees for kindergarten and the bus transportation, if you had to pick.
I don't think it's a big between the 2. I mean, I think they're both really critical. There's a safety concern on the transportation fees, and this is a much smaller budget line item of $40,000. And we are concerned about the volume of traffic now at the Saturday in the afternoon, and the buses having trouble crossing Rockwood. We have talked to Jack, we've looked at possibly putting traffic, we talked about we've looked at traffic lights there, but there's other issues with traffic and backing up on Rockwood Road. So we think that's critically important. But also I think to stay competitive in the state, we're looking for the kindergarten, we're looking at 77% of Massachusetts has already made that shift. I think it's really important. I think it's better educationally for our kids to have a full program for a lot of reasons. But additionally, we lose sometimes students to private schools, whether it's the charter school or whether it's to Catholic school, often because they offer a good option. And the kids leave the district and they start somewhere else, they often remain there. And that's a financial cost to the town in terms of state revenue. So there's that issue too. So I think programmatically it's important, in terms of real estate values, people are looking for what they can. I think it's a really important time. And I think we've felt, as we've talked a lot about this at the school committee level, we felt that we almost have a one-time window to look at bringing these in because of savings we've been able to generate on the special ed side. So if you look at the special ed savings, it almost really comes from the kindergarten. And we do anticipate next year we have quite a few retirements, so we're pretty confident that we're doing this at a time when we can sustain this.
I didn't realize it was a hit to you when kids left and went to a private or Catholic school.
We lose the state funding for those students as well.
Does the town that they go to get them, or nobody gets them because they're in private?
It depends. If they go to a charter school, the money that the state would give us follows the child to the charter school. I don't know how that works with Catholic education. I don't believe it would follow the suit. We just lose it. Sorry, I should introduce Todd Hassett as our district business consultant.
I was wondering what you were looking at
He's
behind
here
my
with the
shoulder.
questions. He can answer them often.
I always hated that bus, and I'd be real glad to see that. To me, it's unclear that some parents have to pay to get their kids on the bus and others have not a lot of terms, so it's a fundamental injustice as well.
I think we can do this. Full support of
I always get confused about transportation budgets. Does that include what we pay for diesel or gasoline, whatever it is that buses run on nowadays?
We have a bus contract, so we pay the bus vendor, and that's all included in the contract, what we pay them monthly. And
They build that in.
yeah, they build that in. Do you want to come to the table, Todd, so people
Todd,
can
feel
see
free
you're
to-
not answering from the
We can join
shadows? But it is built into our
Yeah,
budget.
unlike some districts, we contract out for the service, so the price includes all the staff, the related benefits, the fuel and maintenance and insurance. And we require a certain age of the vehicles, old buses, certainly, that might break down. And then there are also escalation, as you know, fuel has changed quite a bit over the last few years. So there are escalation and de-escalation potentials built into the contract as well. So if we're in the middle of a contract and the prices go down, we do get a credit if we're
So there would be,
contractor.
there would be a credit
Yes. And we
if
see
the
that.
price of gasoline fell.
Right.
But the budget is higher this year than last, even though the price of gasoline is falling.
Right, and what the bus companies are running up against is the new law that requires certain private businesses to fund sick leave and other types of leave that they haven't had to pay for in the past. So what they're experiencing, and we're seeing in the new bus contracts, is now they've got to factor in for subs and sick pay where they weren't doing that in the past. So that's getting passed through with the cities and towns, school districts.
Salaries and things are part of the operation, just like everybody else's.
And the way our bus contract works too, because of the value of the contract, we have to publicly bid that. So we bid it out through a public bid process, and we have to take the lowest bidder. But once you open the sealed bid, you're up, if the committee accepts the bid, we can't negotiate. We have to rebid the whole project, so we don't have as much flexibility as we have that.
And for our special needs students, some in-district and the outplaced students, we do a regional bid with a number of districts. And we try to team up, so if there's a student from Rentham and a student from Norfolk going to the same private school, we'll share in the costs. So we've been able to do a lot of that over the last few years with the regional transportation group for special needs.
Since you said there's only 6 in the half-day kindergarten, and I think we have 97, so we've got 91 to 6. What happens if we don't offer half-day kindergarten?
If we're legally required to provide a half-day kindergarten program, because you have to have a free kindergarten option for families by law.
Okay.
If we transition to full, universal, free full-day kindergarten, we will no longer offer that. But we had to offer it this year because it's the only free option, and you have to have a free kindergarten option.
So if you didn't have half-day,
We will transition to all
full day
full-day
would have to
kindergarten
be
programs.
free.
Yeah, exactly.
So what about those 6 families who don't want the kids in school all day? They would not have an option, correct?
Yes, but a lot of those families that we've talked to have chosen that for financial reasons. If you look at the state average, 98% of kids are in full programs at this. So we would not have a half day, but just like now, we have families that choose to leave the district fully for free full day if a parent really wanted to pursue a private half day option. I don't think that's what the demand would be.
It's been such a long time, I'm sorry, Remind me, how many hours in a half day and how many hours in a full day?
Well, it's about instructionally 3 hours, but you lose time because they're coming in off the bus and getting their coats off. So they come in at 9 and they leave at noon about for the half hour. Okay.
And the full-day program is till 5 o'clock or?
Yeah, 3 o'clock.
Wish.
It's till 3.
9 to 3.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So it'd be consistent with the hours of all the other.
But with only 6 children taking the free option, that's quite a hit in your budget. Or if you're gonna take away that other, what is it, 91 enrolled in the class?
Yeah, that's it. The cost of eliminating the full day is
Pretty
almost
sizable.
240,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it makes up for about 2.5% of the 4.27 increase we're looking for. But again, we're offsetting the majority of that cost by the savings that we generated by the special education programs we built in the district.
No, I understand that, you did a
Yeah.
great job whittling it down, it's just a very difficult year this year with the budget. Unfortunately. I mean, I think it's a great idea to add the full day kindergarten.
Full-day free kindergarten.
Right.
It's amazing though, quite the switch over the years. 'Cause I think 15, 20 years ago, it was pretty close to the exact opposite. I hardly knew anyone that did full-day kindergarten. And
It's been a huge change across
Yes.
the state. And again, like I said, the Massachusetts state frameworks for kindergarten, like I understand, are written and it says right in front of the document based on the full-day kindergarten model. So that's sort of the expectation. And we feel we're putting kids at a disadvantage by not having that full experience. It's very hard to deliver that curriculum in 2.5 hours. And there's a lot you lose in that. And I think too, looking forward to the district, as we said, there's a financial impact of people moving their kids to charter school or to a sacrament that then stay there. And there's an impact on, we're looking to be marketable in terms of what districts offer. And we've got all districts in the surrounding area making that change.
Who determines the fee that's
School
set? School committee. So, just as a thought, is there a way we could look at, instead of hitting us with $240,000 this year, maybe reduce the fee by half that, so that we could look at not quite so big a hit this year, and then transition maybe the next year, and we're paying for the whole thing? Because when Jack's telling us he's $500,000 in the hole, and he doesn't know where he's going to come up with the money, so we're trying to. It's a great goal, and I think everybody agrees, this is where we should be going as a town.
But if Jack finds out, you're in big trouble. That's a big part of this hit.
He's aware of this.
Yes,
We
yes.
have had many conversations about it. We did look at it, and I think the committee really felt that, because we're working so hard on the special ed end to generate savings to reinvest in regular education, we really felt that this was the best time to look at that. And if you reduce tuition, it's a possibility, but it's still it's a hardship on a lot of our families. And really, I'm concerned about the equity that families are choosing this option because they can't afford to participate in the full program. We're concerned about that. No, it's hard, but we tried to be very conservative. We tried to fund this by reducing expenses, by bringing students back to the district, so that it wouldn't be such a big hit for the town. We try to keep our budget costs close to 4% as we could. The good news is you did ask us last year, as far as the special ed budget, if you had
Right.
savings, to look to try to get a return to the town. And we worked really hard at that, and we anticipate that we are going to return to the town. And hopefully that's going to offset some of your legal costs.
Right.
I think it just comes back, right? Because didn't you say they're going on KP?
No,
No, we,
Marley, the discussion last year was, we had
we
some
had a
uncertainty.
placeholder built into our
Oh,
budget
the
for an
placeholder,
out-of-district
okay.
placement.
Okay.
But because we built this experience, we were able to maintain all of our students. We didn't send any students out of district this year. So we do have that placeholder savings. We have one sort of facilities issue at DHL that they were looking at, trying to, I mean, you're probably all aware of the situation with the gentleman in Franklin that entered the elementary school and has one in the hallway, and then was actually outside of Phillips Middle School. So there's a security issue. We're looking at a second set of security containment doors at DHL. So we're going to take care of that importantly first, and then I'll know better after that's done what we have. But we expect to have a pretty good amount of money to help
Could that be used to offset, you can't,
It just comes
We
into free
can't carry
cash.
a budget to budget. We had said that we would return it to the town.
Right.
Well, there may be a way.
Oh, good, that's why I tell you.
Depending on, and we're meeting with Jack tomorrow, but depending on what the makeup of that $500,000 shortfall is, if some of that is pushing some snow removal costs into next year's levy, to hit the levy?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just the current, the
Okay.
next year's budget, yeah.
Because a lot of communities aren't in that position, you know,
Right.
they're funding a portion.
but it would,
Pushing it on.
but it would
Pushing
still
a
come
lot
back
to
in
next
and be
year's levy.
available for the budget though. Whatever they
Be available
return
in
to
the
the
fall.
town
Yes.
Sure.
would
yes,
be
by default,
available
yeah.
for
In
the
fall
budget
before
to
you set
make
the
up,
tax rate.
to
Right.
be
Yeah.
figured in. So when would you have that figured?
We have to take care of the security situation at DHL. We're getting quotes on that right now. We have a roof issue that we're working on there. So it's gonna be probably June before the school committee will make a final vote on
Yeah,
what's.
we were
So it wouldn't be available for town meeting.
No, plus you have to wait till you get free cash certified.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
so,
But I think it would make a difference if you knew that it was, if you had the figure knowing that it was coming in.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, you identify it, it makes
Yeah.
a difference in town meeting. so-
Right,
Right.
right,
Right.
right.
I am happy to get the number as soon as we come, we just don't know what these other
Right.
costs are gonna be.
Right.
And that would be
Sooner than it
available
would go to school committee.
to be appropriated in the fall prior to setting the tax rate. So in a sense, the budget can be, a lot of times it's trued up and balanced, if you will, in the fall.
Right.
Just prior to rate setting.
Of course, your tax rate would be given no matter what. It's
Yes,
still up 2.5%,
you're absolutely right.
and
Yep. Plus,
Whatever pretty much all it's gonna do.
right. Right.
If you step back just a bit, it's striking there's this almost 20% decline in enrollment over the past decade. And it puts some of those increases into perspective against that declining student body. Any comments on why fewer people over almost in every year for the past 10 years have chosen to send their kids to school? And
Our out-of-district numbers with parents that are choosing other options have been flat over that 10 years. So we're not losing more kids.
so it's not the
No.
competition
No.
to the...
They've been, I had Trish, our data specialist, who's here, run those numbers. They've been flat. We have, I mean, there are some families that choose for, religious reasons, private education, but we have very few kids out, and it's been flat. And we do have some families, like I said, that go because they're looking for kindergarten. So, the charter school offers that, things like that. But those numbers have not changed over the time, so we're not losing more
Right.
kids. It's probably birth rates and.
It's town demographics
Town
already.
demographics.
Yeah. It's
Although
4
I-
of the 5 people sitting at this table who don't have any kids in the school system.
And also, Arlie,
At any level.
the box in the page you have, we've started to show you, there's actually a decline in the number of students going to private or other schools. That little box there. and-
Yeah, no, thank you, I do see it.
So
Yeah,
you can see,
yeah.
we've started to include that at the committee's request.
Yeah, that's,
So it's actually a favorable trend.
And
But I
the
think
other
it's
thing
your
is,
point.
Yeah, it's demographics.
Demographics.
we're watching because we're starting to see an increase in enrollment. Because as I mentioned, we had expected about 100 students based on the town census. We've got 139 registered for the first year, which is a big increase for us. So we're sort of wondering with the new building and the stuff going on, if we're going to start to see that enrollment decline start to recover.
Only a little bit, because we're not gonna allow many bedrooms.
Well, 40 kids is, the 40 kids more than we were expecting. You know, 139, we've got, that's 2 full classes.
That is quite a,
For us.
that's quite a jump,
It's a huge
the
jump.
100 this year, yes.
And I do wonder, is we've had a lot of public discussion about the transition to pre-K to kindergarten, and I wonder if more families are choosing to register with that in mind.
Setting expectations.
Well, I mean, our budget discussions are public,
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
so,
And quite a bit of communication on social networks.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great goal, and I mean, you know, if I was back in that situation, I certainly, you know, those people rallying for it, but, you know, it's just, when Jack tells us it's $500,000 in the hole, it's kind of,
I have 4 kids that went through and I paid for the extra time for them to do the full day in the school. I would have loved for them to have had it be universal free. But, I mean, when we moved into town, we knew that if you did full day kindergarten, it was going to, you were going to have to pay. And like you said, it's just, you know, when Jack comes in and says that, it's hard.
How's the still somewhat new school doing?
good.
Yes.
Yeah, from facilities side,
Yes.
very well.
So that,
Yep.
so that delivered already.
Yes, it did. Yes.
All right. Any other questions? I think we have a good sense on, you know, the rationale on the full day, you know, free kindergarten, and we certainly understand it. It's a laudable goal, and as Rick said, hopefully we'll be able to fit it all into the budget once everything comes together. All right. Well, great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's good to see you, it's been a while.
You can leave them in case, yeah, if somebody,
Boys?
yeah.
Oh, we don't take breaks.
I think it's on Jack's computer. All right, so now we're running a little ahead, so let's see. You want to, we've got 2 choices. We could chat on the 3 zoning articles a little bit.
Have a good night, thank you very much.
It's a
Nice
big
to see you.
computer to carry around, that's not quite a.
I'll be right there, Paul, I'm gonna grab all my stuff here.
I mean, it might be worth discussing. I don't know if people are going to be up for a vote, but I'm always open to anything. But on the first one, certainly an interesting one. I understand where Ray's coming from with the proposal. I mean, it's a long article that it's going to be a lot to digest. Although I think if it can get kind of boiled down, it felt like it was he wants to provide an alternative to just someone trying just pushing through a straight 40B, and this allows the town to provide some level of control and shaping. Yes, but certainly, as we've seen at the last at least 2, but I think 3 town meetings,
But I think,
the issue of density is the big one.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
I mean, we've supported, for the most part,
Yes.
not 100% all the time, but we've supported
More or less, yes.
this
Concept.
idea, this concept, every time. And every time we've gone down in flames, but I think, you know, I don't see anything that's really, I don't personally feel like anything's changed in my mind that would make me want to not support this. I think it's a great option, and whether it goes down in flames or not, we'll see, but I would certainly support it.
Right.
I mean, I mean, I have reservations about it being necessary because, you know, friendly 40B, there's really nothing wrong with the friendly. We've got one of these that's in the process. Looks like it's going to be a very nice, nice development from what little I've heard of it.
If they're friendly.
Yeah, if they're friendly.
Although, Pat, I think on that one though, it would remain friendly, I think under the auspices of this, because then the developer doesn't have to go through
Right.
all the state filings. So I think that's why it's a friendlier one than what you might normally see.
Yeah,
I think that's my only, well, I'm not that familiar with it, so that might not be,
And they're in their very early stages, so we'll see what really happens. I mean, generally speaking, you start off very friendly until it gets down to nuts and bolts, and then all of a sudden, it breaks apart.
but I agree.
I don't see the reason to oppose it, I just don't see that a lot of enthusiasm.
Well, it probably will go down in flames, so it's hard to get your heart into it.
Do you know where the selectmen are on this one?
No, and I believe they'll be at the meeting next Tuesday, so we'll take. What's that?
Explaining that?
Yes, and the planning board has to give an opinion on all three of these articles, so I don't know if they'll have their public hearing. I'll try and find that out, and their public hearing is on each of the articles.
Is there a chance that they would definitely postpone any of them,
Well,
based on the
we-
planning
I don't think-
board's? Like, does the
it's-
planning board have that ability?
they can
Like, if they look
recommend,
at it
they
and say,
can
no, we don't
recommend
like
it,
it?
or they can, their recommendation can be not to pass it, but they don't start it.
My inclination would be, this is a good kind of an idea to kick around, but maybe not quite ready for prime time. Maybe instead of just tossing it out there, maybe we should see how things develop. Nothing's happening tomorrow or next year. Certainly, we have 6 months between town meetings, there's plenty of time to do something in the face of something actually in front of you typically. I would be, like you said, you talked about what 3 times.
Right.
Give it a break for a little while, give it 6 months and do it a year.
I guess,
Let the ideas develop more. Let's see what's happening with what's on the table.
I agree that we should, I would like to wait and see what, if planning's having a public hearing, I'd love to see how that turns out, and maybe attend it, so we can kind of get a sense of where this is gonna go. Yeah, it is kind of tough to keep coming back every town meeting with the same concept.
I guess, from my standpoint tonight, we better not to vote on it tonight, because if we vote
Right.
tonight, I'll be, no, whereas in 2 weeks, maybe somebody will persuade it
Yes,
after the hearing.
right,
That'd be my suggestion, is just
yeah.
put it off a little bit.
And then we had the wind and the solar amendment.
I should see a lot of added value in that one.
I'm not for that one.
There are reasonable controls in place that seem like the planning board has to give it its okay. I don't know if anybody would have a by right. Does the planning board have to, could the planning board be unreasonable and have it shut down their throat? I don't know. I mean, that would be the only situation I think where something like this would be helpful. If the planning board is deemed to be unreasonable and somebody would labor over the planning board decision.
Yeah.
For
The
the-
planning board is generally not that unreasonable in terms of allowing things. They are more conservative. That's my sense is that they tend to be more conservative than pushing something down somebody's throat. I
No
don't
matter
know.
how reasonable you were, if I thought you were unreasonable and wanted to take whatever steps I could take, then I think the situation unpleasant. I don't know. That's the only downside I see to this present situation. Not enough to warrant.
And just to, we've gone around twice on it, but, so the current today, if you wanted to put it into an empty field that you own, you could do that, right? That's
With a special permit.
With a special permit, okay. Okay,
And that's why I think we have the protections are there. I think reasonable protections. They're not, guaranteed, but it's a reasonable protection.
yeah. All right. Yeah, a little up in the air on this one myself in terms of if it already requires a special permit. I think
Well, the difference
this
is
is saying
this
this
is the
would
accessory.
remove it completely, right?
Right.
Not even under a special permit.
If it was a primary, it would remove it. You couldn't do any of these things as a primary use of the lot.
But,
There's
and
no
there's
option to
no exception allowed,
Correct.
which I don't like that
Yeah,
there's
I don't
no exception allowed.
Because there may be a situation where it does make sense.
Right.
The neighborhood might put together a community center deal for
All right. Let's see. Let's see Anne-Marie. Hi, Anne-Marie. Are you
They
the?
just left the middle school.
Okay, that's fine.
They're on
Yeah,
the way.
we got a couple of minutes, so that's fine.
So do you want a motion, or is that getting?
Always
Do we
open
have
for
a
whatever.
quorum?
Well,
Fine
these are all
committee members
zoning things,
wanna-
we want to wait for planning to have their say before we jump in. I mean,
But we're not going to hear that until the night of the town meeting. Is that
Well,
is
if
the letter
they-
that we get at the?
I think we will run out of time unless they just, because our last scheduled meeting is next Tuesday.
That's true.
And so,
So let's vote, because we're not gonna,
yeah, I don't think we're gonna
we're
have
not gonna change our
their,
minds either.
their input.
Anybody can make a motion anytime.
Exactly.
Even on the articles.
Exactly.
I don't want to vote on them because
Right.
they'll make me vote.
What's that? Yes. Yes.
And I move to definitely postpone that.
Oh, I second.
Alright, we've got it moved and second to IP. Alright. Get the old one out, hold on. Let me just make sure I'm referencing the right draft.
Where is it? The 31st?
Yeah, what?
You want one? Very quick.
Yes. I got it, sorry. Say there. No, Ray gave it back to me. So that is what we refer to as Article M. So that it moved and seconded to IP. Further discussion? Yeah, I don't know. I would agree. I'm a little up in the air on it. It was an interesting, I assume, and I think Jack positioned what Bob's, it almost seemed like, Ray was fine, but Jack was either way, and Ray was like, there's nothing wrong with doing it, but and I assume Bob sees it as just narrowing the potential exceptions of what wasn't the intent. But yeah, kind of up in the air on this one myself. Don't have a strong feeling one way or the other. I don't know. Any other comments? Or all right. All those in favor of IP and Article M, say aye.
Aye.
Get a oppose. I'll say nay. So we're 4-1. All right. So that one passed.
I can the driveway article.
The driveway article.
The petitioners article?
Yes.
Are we gonna-
Now this one.
Sorry, that is driveway article, yes.
We
Yes.
won't be making the initial motion. I did talk with Jay. His intent is to, of course, we do have a moderator's race, so Jay is still the moderator. His intent is to have the petitioners put forward the two articles and make the initial motion. So, but we can certainly have a recommendation in the warrant regarding this article. I feel like it doesn't seem like a bad idea, but a little unclear, at least at your point, spot on, if there aren't any driveway requirements, it seems like it could be a little loose in that regard of what eventually would come through if one was to come to fruition. And I always feel, again, the position I think many of us had last spring was that zoning in general should go through some process and vetting. So I think that's my concern with this one. Less so even the merits of it, I'm not quite sure. So I don't know how everyone else feels on it.
So even on the merits, for every argument in favor of it, I can think of an argument against it. I'm not sure there's, obviously, you know, the long dead end driveway problems.
Right,
That get a fire truck in there, we can do it.
yes.
And I think that this may be a good thing for the town, but it needs more development.
I agree.
And if we IP it now, maybe it can go back to the planning board and they can look at it as maybe something they would take on and maybe develop an article that
Yeah.
encompasses all our concerns.
Right, and takes into account, I think Lisa's point, maybe there'd be some, again, the concept, there's not even on a private driveway, and so this would effectively be under private driveways. So, yeah. All right, anybody want to make a motion?
I move that I can, what article is this?
Move to
That was
IP,
Lima.
I second.
second.
So just as a matter of process now.
Well, we're not really, yeah, essentially, because we're not going to make the motion to IP it. Our recommendation would be, so it's, we're recommending that the town IP this on vote. Or vote against it, whatever, we might phrase it that way, since the petitioner will certainly vote to put the proposal forward to pass it. Our position would be, we think the town should vote it down,
Yes, it is.
is what we'll say Pat's, I assume that's what his,
He seems a little more
It needs
An
more
article for
mature.
consideration.
Yeah, needs to
What Jay
mature.
may or may not do on the
Age.
floor, I think is
Right.
relevant to us. I would
Right.
say we
right,
We
vote
do
to
our
IP,
usual thing.
yes,
regard.
right, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think the indefinite postponement is better because we're not saying that we disagree, we're just saying that the foundations don't exist for it to work properly.
I'm sorry, did you second it? I know
I
Pat-
seconded it.
okay.
Occasionally it comes out okay.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor of IP in Article L?
Aye.
All right, we are now back on track. So Dr. Zelensky is here and Paul and the crew, and we're ready for King Philip's presentation.
Everybody all set?
Did you get that? Oh, excellent. We're all fired up, ready to go?
Wow. We're going to be here until
No, what we're handing out is not that long.
It'll be okay.
Thank you.
it'll be okay.
All right, our final guest of the evening, King Philip, to review their budget. Dr. Liz, do you want to introduce who's here,
I'm happy
our
to do that.
esteemed guests?
We have Paul Schaefer, who is our Business and Operations Manager, Anne Marie Martin, Chair of the School Committee, and Jim Killian, one of our school committee members.
Welcome.
Remember Finance Committee.
Remember Finance Committee, yes, it's just,
All right, well, we're in a new location up for
You are.
yes,
I've seen that.
different.
yes. So nice and cozy. So anyway, go right ahead, jump.
Sure.
yes.
I just want to, thank you for inviting us here tonight so that we can go through this budget. I know some of you are probably already familiar with the budget. All of our budget documents, development documents, etc., you name it, we've done it, is up on the King Philip website, www.kingphilip.org. So if anyone wants to see any of the backup materials for this, they can access those materials there. We have been having meetings throughout the year, inviting the 3 towns to come in to meet with us on the budget, so people are sort of appraised of where the budget has gone through its development. This budget was also presented, or a longer version, was presented once we had the administrative team presented it, with every team taking their portion. Then I presented my proposed budget, and then the school committee adopted the budget. So I'm just going to really go through some of this pretty quickly. Figured people might want to see it and have copies of it, and then we'll get to the meat and potatoes, which is the dollars and cents, which I think is what you're more concerned with.
Are we the first up? Have you shown this to any other towns?
You are the first up, yeah. Although I think everyone's seen a rendition of it because we've used the basic slides before. They have been updated. So this is the last version since the school committee adopted the recommended budget. Okay. So as I had mentioned, we have some budget transparency and communication. We've had ongoing meetings throughout the year. We've added about 7 additional meetings, and we also made a request of those that attended the meetings. We invited FinCom groups as well as selectmen to these meetings. what are you looking for so that we can give you what you need when you're considering the budget for K-12. And so I'm just gonna go through some really quickly. So let's start with the middle school. This slide just basically shows our projected enrollment. We are actually now becoming more stable. We've had some real bumps in the past few years. We had that big bubble that came through, and we're now going back down to what's about the average enrollment coming in. This slide just really shows the total number of class sections with 25 or more pupils in it. For FY15, you can see how we have movements in the budget years where staff has been added, they've reduced it a bit. But we do run on average, a lot of class sizes are 20 to 30 at the middle school. Especially history, basically almost all sections are there, 20 sections. And our foreign language is very high last year, and we had to make some adjustments there. So we do, our class size is full. We don't usually run a class unless it's a special education class, something very specific. Really doesn't run anywhere under 17 is like a minimum, and most classes are really highly enrolled. This is a line item of what was requested by the departments at the middle school. So each of the departments, textbook supplies, technology requests, transportation, maybe if you look at guidance to transportation, that is for move-up day, those events that we provide busing for, and the totals. And there's another slide here, the rest of the departments for the middle school. The request here is a difference of $31,000. It's up about 16% from last year. But what you'll see when you get to the high schools is actually a reduction, so it's pretty much ends up being about the same. Our October enrollment trends at the high school, similar slide that we saw at the middle school. Again, you can see where we have those bubbles of students that are in. So we're projecting about 1259 for 2016. It's now beginning to level out. Had some really huge. We've been a little bit over capacity at the high school, put it bluntly. Again, class luncheon size, where you have classes that are over 25 or more. Specifically history, you have 71% of classes or 40 sections of history are really at almost 32 and 34 students in those classes. So there really is no room to move in those rooms. We did add a fine arts teacher. We had reduced, but then we added back. And just in general, fine arts is really high numbers anyway. Some of those classes were upwards of almost 40 students because it's a large room and we put more students in. Again, this is the high school, the requests by department line item. And you can see the difference is about $50,000. Which is a 14% decrease over last year's budget. So the high school decreased on some of those supply line items, and the middle school had an increase. Just in general, these are technology district initiatives. We're moving to Office 365. AirWatch mobile device management, which is a beautiful system. I'll just give you something. I think it's really ingenious, either based on time or location. I think I prefer time myself. Students come in with it's bring your own device. You have your own device, your phone, your iPad, your whatever. And we know kids will have devices in class and want to go, maybe a little Facebook during math class or whatever that is. When you come into the district, based on clock time or location, say 7:30 school starts, all your devices that are not approved by us for use are shut down. You cannot access your apps. If you attempt to access your app, you'll get a warning. This is not approved for this time. And then once, 2:15, 2:30, school is dismissed. Kids may be hanging out waiting for sports or a music lesson. They then can go back onto their apps. They're reactivated. So whatever app a teacher wants to use, it will actually can be put on their device. So it's a really good control system to keep them and keep us safe.
For iOS.
Right, yes.
So if you have an Android or something.
I believe it goes all devices. It's all devices.
Cool.
for Office 365, what's going to be different is that all the students are going to have their own email address within the district. So now they'll be able to access their work from home. They'll have their own folders, their own files, and that's the main reason for that. So this gives them total flexibility to be able to get access to their work wherever they are.
And it also allows them to download Word and certain software programs that they use on up to 5 devices for every email address that they're
Any concern that if some students don't have internet access or reliable access? So
they have access in school.
Okay.
And we've done some surveys on that,
Yeah.
and there's very few students that actually don't have access or the ability. And then those that don't, I mean, we work with
Okay.
students to make sure that they have what they need. So, we're working on some data bridge with HR and student information systems, those just so that we don't have double entry of data, for example. And SIP bridge, this is required by the state now, we have to be SIP compliant. And this is for our student information system and the data warehouse where all the assessment scores are kept. And all the information on teachers' certifications and who they teach. So at the middle school and high school, we have some NEPA parts, some more management sophomore with district determined measures, our general maintenance contracts, things of that nature. And so the total technology requests with everything is $149,000. The difference is we're less $33,000 than our request for last year. So the percentage is a savings of 18.4% on the technology line item, which considering that's,
Was there something, was like a one-time item last year, or did something in, like what, I'm almost surprised that it went down.
There are lease payments still going offline, and we're not replacing them.
Okay, we don't need the, whatever was
Because
on
we're
lease?
not purchasing them.
we're not purchasing, it's really bring your own device and.
So by moving more to bring your own device, the district's not so much needing to purchase laptops.
Now, if there's a child who doesn't have a device, they don't have internet, maybe they can't afford a device, do you have a program to offer them one?
Yes, we have, we're looking into some various rental options, but there's also still devices in school, and what we purchased are laptop carts, so they're more mobile, so they go pushing into the classrooms more, than having the kids literally get up and go to the lab. So, and it's on a schedule, so the planning is much more, a little bit more thoughtful and thorough in that, so they know that, this department is doing a major writing piece and freshmen or sophomores, so those labs are being taken, so they make those adjustments there. And we also have portable laptops at the middle school also. Really very important in having our students really have much more, not just access, but the ability to use these portable devices, especially since whether you become PARC or MCAS or whatever the state decides, MCAS, if it is going to be MCAS, is going to have to go electronic. These students need the experience of being able to write and proof and edit, which is something different because they're still used to doing longhand and then typing in, so it's a little bit different experience for them. We found that with some of our trials. So we're just trying, and also everything in college, if you take a math course in college, it's all online. You may sit in class, but all of your tests, your quizzes, your homework is all done online. So you have to move in that direction. Special education, again, these are number of students by placement type projected as of October 1. So we always use this, that is the date, October 1. So this goes up to FY15. And so those in blue are in-district special ed programs. Child may need services in one class or another, inclusion, number of students. Green are specialized programs, and we have, from connections program to links program, very specific profiles of disabilities that we program within the school for, much
So
more
that's
self-contained.
Just within KP, that's
Just
what
within KP,
okay.
yep.
So that's not FICA?
No,
okay.
FICA would be in the yellow, that would be
Gotcha,
included
okay.
in the out-of-district license. Although any collaborative, especially FICA, remember, is really considered to be an arm of the public school, because that's how it works. So that's just so you've seen.
Dr. Lee, that's 7 through 12, right?
Yeah, that's 7 through 12, yeah. Now, this is something for you that was interesting. So we get census on the students from the 3 towns who are coming in who have specialized needs. And we do this early on so we sort of can plan for them. So based on what each town was doing, they were needing 4 full-time, 1-to-1 teaching assistants at a cost of about $160,000, 2.5 shared assistants at about $100,000 for a total of $260,000 to service this group of students coming in. Very similar profile. So this group coming in, we're proposing a different a new service model with a teacher, a teaching assistant, and shared teaching assistants for a total of $185,000. So we're going to save about $75,000 over what the elementary schools individually, have been paying, because these students do all have the same similar needs, and so therefore a specialized program will be developed for them. It does sometimes go in cycles as students come in, we work on these programs, and you'll see that. We have a variety of student profiles that come in, but it's like this whole cluster is coming in this year with this profile.
But there's one or two from each town, so you couldn't have the specialized program.
If they didn't, unless they reach a
in the
lower
sixth grade,
level.
at the lower level. So
Right.
we're able to take them all, put them together into one.
And we believe that there may be greater savings. We are looking at potential students who are already out of district with this profile, possibly coming back into district, so we work with that.
Does this reflect the specific situation of students entering the program? That
Yes.
you're able to offer this new service model?
Yes. This is actually a program that probably was at KP maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and then there wasn't enough really students to support what they, one student, a cluster, and then they moved out. So we haven't seen this particular type of profile for a while. It's sort of now re-emerging, so to speak. I mean, there's students who have this profile, but to have the number that we can support internal program. So let's get to the sort of the money. We have some budget drivers here. So contractual increases for salary and benefits for current staff. You see the 15 budget, the proposed 16 budget, the difference in dollars and the difference in percentages. And that's salaries and benefits total. We have special education costs. This includes the additional on that of the new program is included in those costs. So you have the total from out-of-district transportation, the new program for a total. So that increases about 12.1% difference between last year and this year.
How did you manage to cover the transportation budget?
We have some students who, the transportation budget is either a student is graduating and will no longer need the transportation. Also students who are now more like profile, we can cluster them together. And we're looking at bringing some potential students back in the district. So it's adjusted those ways.
Plus, we also belong to the Michael Collaborative, and we have it unique to the state, but it's what they're looking at is closely. Michael has all the sped students are put together. And so, for instance, if the kids going from Norfolk and from Foxborough or from Franklin, they're all going to learning prep, and it's on the way, then we're using one van to transport those 3 students and we're sharing the costs. And that model has been working pretty well.
That's a good idea, yeah. How many schools are in the FICO collaborative now?
There were 18, so there's 17. We had
17.
one that came off,
And
or 2 that came off.
There's 11 in the transportation.
Okay.
And you had to opt in for the transportation piece. Depending on the size of the district, they may run their own special buses. So we have some general fixed costs, regular transportation, utilities, license service agreements. And so that's about a 9.1% increase. All other costs, administration services, and I have to say this, that is not what administrators get paid. That would be legal and other services they're administrative. I'm often asked that question, so I figured I'd just have there. Some instructional services, you'll see a decrease. Other student services, operations and maintenance, other charges. So total other is 1.8% of the budget. It's not there are some reductions there. So when we originally proposed the budget, we proposed it, looked at a level service, and then we looked at if we could add positions, where those positions would be added. So these are the added positions or new positions that are part of this budget. So guidance, in addition of a full-time guidance counselor, in order to keep moving with the new house design, we're well over what the state recommends for a guidance counselor for people. So this needs to sort of come into play so that we can do better servicing of our students. Not just a lot of triage, but like really preparing them freshman year on college needs to be the focus and how you get there and what you need to do and help families with that. The library position is a new position, but it's a zero added to the budget, but we wanted to show it as a new position. It is going to be a shift of a position in one area to the title of Instructional Technology Media Specialist, sort of the more modern version of a librarian, much more the technology, the supporting of that technology piece within the student support program in the library that we put in place last year. So it's really a zero to the budget, but it is an add, so we wanted to make sure that people knew that it's sort of a new position. It's a shifting
And where's
position.
that, who has the -1, so to speak? If we're +1 here?
It's going to be a secretarial
Okay.
position.
All right.
So
So-
it's sort of a
okay.
more of
Yeah.
sort of two. Mathematics, increase 8.6 position to full-time. What we have is we had a huge need in mathematics, and mathematics teachers are hard to find. We had a retired mathematics teacher who's come in, who's been doing the work for a number of years. But from what we have to pay versus getting someone full-time, and we still need those sections, so it makes sense to move that into a full-time position. Choral music, this was a request from the community and the parents and the surveys that we did. We have a phenomenal middle school music program. If you came to the Sound of Music, you might have, they're just wonderful kids and music and a huge choral program. It's opting in an honors choral program, but it ends at the middle school and doesn't go up to the high school. So this would be adding a music teacher to the high school so that we can continue the choral music program. So currently there's only one section of chorus at the high school. And this would add a lot more diversity to that program. Human Resources Department, $95,000 is the request. We had a MASBO report as well as a new set of auditors that came in, taking a look at the whole business operations. A thorough report was done. MASBO basically said that we are 4 positions short in the business office. So we need to do some rectifying of that in order to do a better and thorough job instead of always sort of being in crisis and trying to get things done. So we're looking at taking a part-time position, making that position full-time, and adding additional responsibilities on that position. And then an HR director who can then take care of some of the other positions. It's amazing. I mean, they do an unbelievable job, but it's a difficult challenge. Because everything is, everything is done in-house, so. And benefits is huge, it just changes like everything. Between the healthcare, MTRS, Norfolk, all those pieces. So the adopted operating budget, the FY 15 budget was 27,505,175. And then here's your budget drivers. The FY operating budget that was requested or actually approved was adopted as 29,097,346. And so that is about a total to the budget, operating budget of 5.8%.
Now, did that include the costs in the previous slides?
Yes, yes.
So you got a level service, which, was that 27,505? No, that was last year.
Last year budget.
Yeah, and so these other, the 67.5 and the 35 and 65,
Like
95, they're all-
265 total.
What did that add up to, Pat?
265.
265, okay. So of the 1.6, 265 are those the previous two slides?
So this is the town assessment based on the adopted budget. This assessment includes $150,000 designated out of our E&D fund. So that generally reduce the assessment. And this is pre-governor's numbers, which is pre-house. So I'm gonna let Paul talk about that a little bit because your numbers are going to change. Your assessment numbers are going to change. They're going down.
Show the debt service.
Oh, relative to that slide?
Yes,
Relative to that slide.
As opposed to, you sent us updated when you gave me the, and actually, I'll give you,
I think we
give you
added
hard
it
drives
tonight,
back.
yeah.
But the ones you dropped off,
Oh, okay.
we'll save
You're-
$5.
you're-
We're saving $5.
I wasn't expecting to get back.
There you go.
It's
my contribution.
There's no virus on it, right?
No. But anyway, on the files you included on those there, Paul, you gave the updated assessment.
I did,
Yes.
but I brought it with me tonight.
Well,
Excellent.
so we'll look at
All
that.
right.
This is just not.
Yep.
All right. And then, anticipate adjustments to the operating budget. Contract negotiations, we're currently in contract negotiations, with the teachers now. Health insurance premiums were budgeted at a 2% increase. And we are negotiating with the insurance carrier to see if we can get that lower. From what I understand, it's a really good, it's generally a good number. It's, based, we know it probably, knowing what happened this year, it may be going up a little higher next year, but if the lower we can get it, the better. We are going out for bids on regular transportation, so there's a range difference of 3 to 5%. That we built that.
Which number what do you have in the budget? The 3 or the 5%?
I have the 5%.
You have 5 in there, okay, so there could be some, all right, yeah.
And then special ed costs can fluctuate depending on who's coming in and moving out. And this is your debt service. So this doesn't change, so so.
That won't take effect until 17.
17.
So we're looking at,
Yeah, we're investigating now.
we've gone 10 years now, we're looking at refinancing the bonds.
Okay.
And the initial, talking to the bank today, we may be able to save $2 million over the
Okay.
next 10 years, so we're
Wow.
actively going to pursue that.
Right.
And, on something like
Yeah. And granted, that's excluded debt, so there's kind of but it'll drive down the tax rate, so that's the
Exactly.
that's the beauty.
So that you,
for
get it back.
All right, there we go. And then you have the assessment on
I have these- I
the
have
back
the-
sheet.
The assessment calculation on the back
Right.
sheet of the presentation.
Yeah.
Only to show you, the budget number has not changed, but I
Yeah.
wanted to highlight some of the changes. The charter reimbursement was actually a little bit more than what I had budgeted. In Chapter 78, the governor's budget I was basing it on $25 per student. He came in with $20 a student. So there was actually a reduction in what the adopted budget was. The required minimum local contribution, I used the numbers that are in blue below the yellow for the budget that the school committee adopted. The yellow numbers are what's actually now coming out of the governor's office. So you'll see a big shift there, and my transportation aid came down about $30,000. The crux of it is if you go right down to the bottom, the assessments would increase by 38,000, but Norfolk's actually will go down 67,000. Plainville's will go up 26,000, and Renton's will go up almost $81,000 because of the change or the shift in the minimum local contribution calculation. If the Senate and the House play with that number could change again. But when we come to town meeting, then I would expect that the school committee would take a vote prior to Norfolk's town meeting. Well, I don't know how they can, because we're not expecting the House number to come out until the very end of April. So sometime in June, this will all sort out. But your assessments actually could go down
Right.
potentially.
Although to level set everything, the number Jack currently has in the budget is the 499 number. So that's the number he has in. Now, unfortunately, so good news there, hey, we're matching on the number, but unfortunately, as a town, we're at a hole of 500,000, so we're trying to figure out, yeah, how do we resolve that? I'm not sure how the other two towns, I think they're much earlier in the process, so it's harder to say.
And so he's
where they're
there,
at.
so he's using the governor's numbers.
Yes, yes. Okay. All right, that all makes sense.
I
You wanna-
wait-
you wanna-
That's just a wait and see.
You want to jump into questions, or did you have any
No,
other?
no,
go
Excellent.
right ahead.
All right.
Try to answer it.
Yes.
I really like the way you have this laid out.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Very
the
easy to
presentation's
follow.
excellent,
Very
excellent format. It's easy to see all the
A little
changes.
concerned about this.
That's if you want to go into the nitty gritty of every
We
line.
give you the line
Yes.
items as you know.
Or call me.
Although, Paul, I will say, one of the ones that,
Anybody.
yes, one that I thought was kind of interesting, if we could just spend, it's the, it was your out-of-district tuition page that you kind of put together, you know, it has all the, there it is, the pluses and minuses, and so, on the one hand, this is one of the ones, I don't know, it was, it's one of the ones I emailed out, yes.
Any chance you get up on the screen for us? Is that possible?
No, what we
no,
did was
because
send them.
Here it is.
But anyway, not to so much dive into each row, but the broader one, it seems like our per pupil costs are skyrocketing, whereas our population is actually down a couple, but let's call it stable, down a couple. But then you know, our per pupil is going up like 20%.
Yeah.
Is there, how
It's-
firm are
it's-
those numbers right now?
Well, it's
or-
the tuitions, but we've got,
Yes,
but there's an outlier in that group.
Okay.
We've got one child
yes,
who, this year's budget cost was a little bit under $200,000. Next year, he's gonna cost, I say he, but I don't know if it's a he or she, is gonna cost upwards of over $400,000.
how much?
400.
Over $400,000. It's a critical residential placement that also is requiring the one-to-one aid 24/7.
How does that, and then, so how does that work from the towns, like whatever town a student such as that lives in is on the hook, or is there a circuit breaker?
Hypothetically speaking,
Yeah,
a child has two parents and two parents live in two different towns. And they both live in Massachusetts. And therefore, because they both live in Massachusetts, the two towns split. But if one of those parents hypothetically moves to another state, then the district that
yeah,
has to take the whole total.
wow. And then is there a circuit breaker against that?
Next year.
Yes,
I mean, we
but
get
it's a
reimbursed
year
the
out.
we get reimbursed the following year.
Reimburse the following
But
year.
by, the circuit breaker is,
A percentage
Yeah,
of the cost over.
Well, in this case, it'll be a huge number, because it's 70% of the excess over, what, like 45P or something?
Say,
Over 40,000.
40,000, so,
We'll get
you're
that,
getting back,
we'll get that back next year, so,
but you get it a year in arrears,
Correct.
so to speak.
so that'll be reflected in
Huh,
FY
yeah,
17
next year's
FY
budget.
17.
Yeah, because I was, relative to circuit breaker, I actually thought, because last year we had a bit of the same issue, it seemed like our out-of-district tuitions were going up quite a bit, and so we had to effectively fund that increase because we wouldn't get the circuit breaker till the next year. So then I was kind of expecting this year we'd see a higher circuit breaker credit utilization.
Well, I did use a higher number,
Yeah.
but what you're seeing is the net number.
No, I'm looking at, in the detail budget, you break out the circuit breaker.
Right.
Yeah.
we did.
So it's about $1 million
Yeah.
each year. I was thinking it would be a couple $100,000 higher this year.
It was 750,000. We received $1 million this year, and I estimated $1 million for next year.
Right. Yeah, just seems, I would have thought it would have gone up a little higher, that's.
Well, I'm waiting, we're waiting for
Okay.
everything, the dust to settle as closer we get to June. So when it comes to June, I may be able to increase the amount that I'm guessing the circuit breaker is going to be,
Okay,
which can then reduce the tuition.
right.
Which I think will be-
And what's our credit balance, our reserve sitting at right now
it's,
per circuit breaker?
I'm reserving just under $400,000,
Okay, so.
which is the one kid. The poor,
Well, yeah, but that's a
Yeah,
extreme one.
right.
Most of them aren't at 100,000.
no.
But, okay. And then what's our, so we're gonna use 150,000 of EMD, what's our remaining EMD?
We're estimating 890 less than 150.
So about
And
a
the
little
school
over
com-
700,
And
less
school
some
committee
capital
also
projects.
just, $50,000
Right,
for
right.
our sanitary project.
Yeah, yeah. Because we have that on the warrant, again, that's, the schools council says you need to go to the town and
Right.
get their approval.
The approval, but the
Yeah.
money's coming out.
Yes, it's not, it doesn't
It's-
quote unquote
yeah.
cost the town anything,
Right.
right, right, just like the ones we did last year.
Right.
Okay.
What happens when you get attorneys involved?
Right.
Hey,
So-
easy on the language. All day after you need us.
It keeps us out of trouble.
And,
It's a good thing.
right. And so it seems like EMD's probably has gone up a little bit over the last couple of years,
Mhm.
because I felt like we were down around 500 maybe a year or two
We were at
ago.
600 at the end of last year,
Right,
and we were estimating, we haven't been certified yet, but
okay,
I'm estimating 890,000.
yeah, less the couple of uses,
Less
so
of,
bringing it
less
down,
of,
yeah.
and then subtracting uses, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that was the only thing on the out-of-district tuitions, it
Yeah,
just
and that
seemed,
sort of helped you to,
well, I don't know, yeah, I think even if you, yeah, maybe if you don't, but,
Well, the rates are going up.
Yeah.
And the kids that are, the kids that are going out they're becoming more
Yeah.
severe.
right, because, so I think the one that skews it, you know, it's in one of the private rows, but the other row's going up quite a bit too, so it just seemed odd if we have mostly the same kids, or they're just moving from, you know, the middle school row to the high school row,
Right.
that it would go up so much on a per pupil basis. So that was my only, seemed like maybe there's some potential savings there if
There may be.
we overestimated the, yeah,
Of course, we will overestimate high, because number one, normally, we can't come back to the towns for
right,
supplemental funds.
right,
as we get closer, because we do work from the moment we get the census through to make sure that we know where kids are. And, you know, we're still working on, for example, the new program to see if we can actually bring that also into that. About when the ERA funds were around, which was what, 4 or 5 years ago? 4 years ago? The state put a freeze on tuitions for out-of-district placements, so the schools couldn't increase. And those were lifted about 3 years ago. So there's been this slight creeping up, or this big creeping up on the out-of-district tuitions, because now there's no real parameters around what they can charge. That's what we tend to use, mostly collaborative placements, is really what we do. About 75% of the students that we place are definitely going to collaboratives.
No, I think we're doing an excellent job trying to maintain people in the district or in the LICO, because, you know, we've got, from your chart there, you know, we're kind of getting that number leveled out, whereas, you know, it's kind of skyrocketing for a while there, so that's great. But yeah, so that, I mean, that would be my only comment on that was, maybe just check some of the per pupil ones. It just seems like a few really jumped, notwithstanding the one extreme case that we had.
We do really appreciate your attendance at the meetings. It's helpful.
Yeah.
I assume there must be some thought given periodically to some kind of risk sharing on these extreme cases, but nothing has happened in that nature. People thought about it, getting 20 towns together to kick in 50 grand for a risk premium to cover whoever loses,
Right.
whoever the wild card.
That's an interesting idea, Pat, yeah.
I've never heard of that. So.
Yeah,
You know, and I think that what the state's, you know, circuit breaker is supposed to sort of be that piece, which, you know, they don't fund.
Exactly.
They don't fund
They
anything.
don't it's not big enough to go
No,
up all the way.
no.
But if you were, you found 20 schools that were willing to kick in, 50 grand a year, let's say anything over 200 we could cover, whatever, I don't know, something.
Right. Almost like a self-funded insurance type of
It's an interesting
a
concept.
catastrophic plan for just, because obviously every town doesn't, I mean, that's, kind of a real extreme one, and so that's an interesting idea. You have to, you never know when you look into the regulations,
Right.
what could be put together, but I think it's definitely something worth at least discussing with a couple other and just see.
It's an interesting concept.
Right, right.
To see, well,
Yeah.
see the
Because you're kind of on the hook for the extreme amount the first year, since the
Right.
circuit breaker comes in after that, and at least
right.
brings it down to a somewhat manageable, but still
And
pretty high number,
And there's guidelines relating to when a student moves. If a student moves to another town, it's by April 1, then you don't have to pay that year's tuition, the other school,
Yeah.
so it's,
whereas clearly the state should be doing something like that, but since they're not going to, and they just like to have the towns pay for it, maybe there is a way the various towns could kind of try and come up with something, almost like a BICO type initiative for extreme, yeah, or bring it up at a, right, yeah, just as a way to, I don't know. I'm sure we'll find there's some crazy rule that you can't manage your
You
risk.
can't solve your
but-
problem because the
Right.
people can solve your problem.
Right.
Back to my other point.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, I think we understand all the numbers in there. I don't know if anyone else had any other, that was.
I guess
go
my
ahead, yeah.
issue, not issue, but my question would be that the enrollments are really all over the place. I mean, I kind of would have expected the jump after 2008 because of the collapse of the economy. But then 2013, we jumped up again, and
we have a tremendous number of students who choose to go to private schools and tend to come back to us as sophomores. They go to private schools and they find that KP provides more opportunities to them in a good education. I mean, our students are getting into top colleges, Ivy League colleges, for academics as well as for sports. And so I think they're finding that. And we give out it's well over $1 million a year in scholarships that come through. We have established scholarship funds that students apply to. So KP's not a bad place to be. You get a really good education, and most of our students go on to college and are getting accepted into the colleges that
Right.
they choose to
I
go
mean,
to.
it bumped back up in 13 and kind of stayed the same until this year, really. Until, well, what's projected for next year. We're projecting a,
The enrollments in the 3 elementary schools are dropping.
yeah, right, I know that.
Yeah, we certainly have seen it. As we were looking at the Norfolk one, it's been on like as early as you point out, a 10-year trend going down. And we weren't sure, but apparently are the other 2 towns as well experiencing decreasing elementary enrollment? Yeah, so eventually it's going to play itself out at KP. Yeah, on a few-year delay.
2013 or 12, we have some housing.
Oh, yeah.
There's a housing.
The housing boom, we had some new houses being put up. You have a lot more apartments going on in Plainville. And then you have both the development on the Rentham-Norfolk line. That pretty much, I thought the Norfolk side was all sold out. And those are not, they're not 1 or 2 bedroom, they're 4-bedroom homes. And typically people who go into 4-bedroom homes don't typically have little ones, they have middle and high school age kids. So.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. I don't know. You might be over projecting the down in a couple of years. Is that like you said, if the developments are bigger, you're going to have people moving in with older kids. So
You're
even
gonna
though
see it swing back
swing
up.
back
even
up.
though the
There
elementary's
seems to be a
going
lot of
down,
development coming in.
Yeah.
you might not see it quite as much at the high school, middle school.
And I do know that your kindergarten enrollment last year, this year was like huge.
I think, yes, Ingrid was just saying, I think this coming year, it's a big spike.
So, yeah,
Yeah, that one's been a little, 2 years ago, it was a big spike and then it went down, and this coming year, she says it's spiked back up again.
I used the three-year weighted average following the cohorts.
Okay.
This is just
Alright.
one. NASDAQ uses the same.
And again, at this point, it's really just informational,
Yeah.
it doesn't, yeah. Because, just so we're matching up the numbers for the budget are the 2015 enrollments, right? For this coming year?
Yes,
Or-
but for the apportionment, it's the October 1, 2014.
No, I know, we're even
Yeah.
like, the apportionments are almost like a year and a half behind, so to speak, to the end of the
Yeah, 'cause
fiscal
it's an old number.
Right. But in planning classes and all, you're using the 2015 column for next year?
Right.
And then the 16 is just where you think it'll be the following year? Okay, all right.
Well, you also, you have also, on another subject, you do have a warrant article for changing the due date of
Yes.
the budget.
Yes, we've talked about that. I think we all understand it. Certainly it was out of the discussion we had at one of our meetings. So I think we could go through it real quick just to make sure, but it's
Questions on
article.
the budget?
Oh, go right ahead
Sorry,
before we
you
jump
could-
off the.
Yeah, there are a couple of things. So just to stack them up for you, state aid last year, chapter 70, treatment student fees, and capital plan in the budget, comments on those? You got a...
We don't have a capital plan. The debt service is on most of the time, everybody wants to just look at the operating budget.
Right.
So the debt service is already on the slide, so that hasn't changed. So that number's there. Right now, we don't have a capital plan. We're working on one, but we also know that there's another.
The capital plan question leads on to this turf committee request.
That's why we don't have a capital.
So you don't have a capital plan.
From what I understand, that the impetus of that article is not coming from the school.
Right.
It's coming from the community.
There's a turf field committee, there's members of the 3 towns, they've been raising money.
That's right, it says
for 5
KP
years.
Turf Committee. I guess there is actually a turf committee.
There is.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, they've been raising money for 4 or 5 years now. They've got about half the money
Right.
necessary.
Okay, so if this money is incremental to
Yes.
this?
Yes.
Did you get, I presume you are supportive
Yes.
of the turf?
We are.
Well, we are.
We are, yes.
Okay.
Has the school committee taken a position on the turf? or
We
no?
have not, obviously, we would like to see the turf in town for our students. However, it has always been our position that this was going to be a publicly raised, funded process. And that's what I stood up in front of town meeting 2 years ago and said that, we would not be coming to the town to ask them for money for this process specifically.
From the school.
From the school.
School committee.
From the school committee.
Did you want to talk about the last motion? Regarding the committee and South Point open bidding process?
The committee, well, the only motion that we approved was to get them a bid, to let them go out for bid so that they would have firm numbers to request funding from the towns. But the request is not coming from the school. The request is coming from individual citizens in the towns.
And does the school committee have a position on the request?
The school
Not as-
committee approved the bid so that the turf committee could move forward with their intention of seeking additional funding from the towns. So they approved that,
They
they approved
approved
the
the
bid.
bidding process.
They approved the bidding
Is
process.
what the
that-
school committee approved. Didn't go forward.
Back to the other questions. Chapter 78 is up or down relative to last year?
It's up relative to last year, but I had assumed that it was going to be $25 per student, which was the minimum aid from last year.
Right.
The governor reduced it to $20 per student.
So the 7.3 million you got here is...
It is an increase from last year,
But not
but
as much
but
as.
less.
but not as much as I was estimating when the school committee adopted the budget.
Okay.
I don't think it's dramatically different though.
No, it's $5 per student.
Yeah.
It's 10 grand.
10 grand, that's what I was thinking,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah, it's
not.
not, yeah, it's
I
not.
mean, the overall aid is about $50,000.
I would say it's,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And where do student fees, band fees, above that, what's that coming to?
That's in revolving funds, and it does not come in here at all.
Are they changing?
Not yet. And we'll be looking at that in May and June.
So were you to increase
So there's an
student
element
fees?
though, Arlie, to your point, maybe, sorry to interrupt you there, but just to extend it a little bit. There's an element of, certainly in the athletics and probably the band too, because you're allocating costs between revolving and the
Right.
operating budget. The presumption though in the budget is the fees are staying the same?
Yes.
Yeah, that's okay. All right. But there hasn't been a decision made on that per se yet.
Not
Not
yet.
yet, we
Not yet.
look at it and look at the allocation.
There haven't been dramatic changes in the programs.
Right.
And the costs are staying relatively flat. So
And
it's-
participation's been
the
pretty
fees,
consistent.
yes, so actually the fees rate come down.
Yeah. Or is participation up a little and that might allow them to come down? Okay, all right.
In some
In some-
areas,
in some areas.
Yeah, yeah,
things up,
right.
in other, again, a lot of things depend on student interests, so try to, adjust as those interests. So.
Yep. Do you have any other questions? No? All right. So the last thing is, maybe if we just briefly go through, just so we're all, it's article in our warrant, Article Q.
It couldn't be A, right? First.
Oh, no, I'm
It's
sorry,
not
the reason
these are not ordered
actually,
yet.
the reason they have letters right now is because the selectmen haven't put them
Oh,
in
put 'em in
order.
order, okay.
Yes, yeah, that's just so when we're discussing, we know which one we're talking about, yeah. You have to make a little pitch to
Okay.
Scott and Jim.
I'll do
that-
my
yes,
very best.
Yes, to get you up in the queue there.
Like everyone
All
else,
right.
right?
Yes. So I don't know, do you guys want to explain, or I?
Well, initially,
Yeah.
it was generated actually by representatives from Rentham,
Yes.
and they were actually just quite concerned, why do we always have to have our numbers so early? When the numbers are useless or not relevant. And even more so this year because we have a new governor, so his budget wasn't due until March 4th. And we had to have our budget ready by February 14th. And as you can tell, we're working with all kinds of numbers that don't make any sense. So what we tried to do, or what Rentham wanted to do, was to back off the due date of the budget and yet still be in, and have a number though, still in time for your town meeting. So we think that March 15th will probably do it. It gives us another month to firm up the numbers.
Right, because
That's really
budget,
the purpose for it.
right, because the budget we're really reviewing here is the one that was prepared in February, right? It really hasn't
Maybe with
changed,
some-
late
with
February,
some,
yeah.
yeah.
It got pushed out a little bit just
With
based
all the
on the
snow, right? Yes,
So,
yes.
We
lost
kept
two
having
budget
to
hearings
cancel.
to snow.
Right.
So I'd always heard this February date was some kind of legal requirement.
It is.
It's
It
in-
is legal in the
It's
sense
legal by the
that
three
it's
towns
only
operating
Three
agreement.
towns agreement, not
Yes.
some state.
No, not a
law.
state.
It's in our
Right.
rental agreement.
It's in the charter.
Yeah.
So at any time in the last 3 years, we could have changed.
The three towns could have changed it,
Yes.
yes.
But all three parties have to agree, and the
Right.
vote has to take place at town meeting.
And this change doesn't affect your spending calculations. It only affects the accuracy presumably of the Chapter 70 and the other government contributions.
More so the accuracy of the revenues, I suppose.
Well, I think also, a better understanding of some of the wild variant ones like special education, I think.
As you
Better,
get closer,
better.
as
Certainly,
you get closer to the end of
The
the day.
base budget
you're
stuff
able to
is
understand.
pretty easy, yes.
But the number that fluctuates, and it has in the last 6 years, it's changed on us twice, on June 29th, is that minimum contribution number, which affects the assessments the last day of the year. Which is that number.
All right. Yeah, I
So,
think, yes, go ahead.
Motion to approve Article Q.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? That's good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Excellent. All right, Good sales job. Also.
Well, you were there for the whole
Actually-
conversations, you were there.
I'd also take a motion on Article R as well, if there's any interest.
No, because we shouldn't have to vote on this one.
Yeah.
I'll make a
That's
motion
not our
to,
attorney's point of view.
All right, motion to approve Article R, a second by anyone? Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions? Great. All right.
Is that adding the,
That was the,
the dollar amount to the
$50,000.
sanitary budget?
Yes.
But that's not the capital budget.
No.
No.
Why are you suddenly voting on, I think, line items in your budget? I mean, I kind of, I
Well,
like the feeling of power, but
Because
it's
they're,
just, it
because
can't be.
they're using money from E&D and they have, and since it's capital related, you have to have the town's authorization for the increase in the dollar amount that we're going to be spending.
We're just
So
doing
we're
what our
just doing what
lawyer
it's
tells us.
E&D is
All right.
used
Trust me, if the
extensively.
lawyer
I
told
know.
them they need to do it, they need to do it.
Oh, well, sure.
Don't
Okay.
make it difficult, just
Let's
do
go.
what we say.
Thanks very much.
Jump through it, don't ask
Yeah.
why.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
I'm sure you don't want these, they could be
No.
a keepsake.
I know.
It's the whole.
It's the
This
wrong
is
color.
The whole budget book, the whole budget book.
All right.
It's the wrong color.
All right, this was actually our last topic for the evening, so, unless,
Motion to adjourn.
You're welcome to have it if you
all right,
want.
all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned.
Yes.